Matt and Greg used to interview movie stars, but now they're doing a podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 21. Matt and Greg used to interview movie stars. I'm Matt Levitz.
I'm Greg Srzawowski.
And today we have two great movies for you for the price of one. Actually, for the price of nothing. You're not paying anything for this. I don't know why I even said that.
I don't even know if it's two great movies. You know why?
Why?
Bad. A very, very bad, guilty response, Matt. I have not seen Back to the Future 2. I've only seen the first one and the third one.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I know. But I did listen to the interviews. I did.
How do you watch the third one without seeing the second one?
Because I'm me and I'm stupid. So I apologize, man.
Wow.
Yeah. I'll eventually get to watching this down the road.
Okay.
But you loved it. And that's what counts.
Yeah. I've seen all three Back to the Futures many, many, many times. I know those movies quite well. As well as Tim Burton's Batman, which is the other film we're going to do today. Just to let you guys know, the Back to the Future 2 junket was November 19th, 1989. Batman was June 13th, 1989. And we're going to throw in an extra interview because you can't really spotlight Batman without Jack Nicholson. Jack Nicholson didn't do the Batman junket. So we had a choice of, do we just put our show out there with no Jack Nicholson, or do we throw in a Jack Nicholson interview from one of the other many times that we interviewed him? And we chose to do that. So we're actually going to end with an interview with Jack Nicholson from the movie Wolf, and that was conducted June 5th, 1994. So just to give you a complete overview of who's going to be on this show, for Back to the Future 2, we're going to start with Thomas F. Wilson and Leah Thompson together. Then there's going to be a press conference with the two of them again, plus director Robert Zemeckis, screenwriter Bob Gale, producer Neil Canton, and Michael J. Fox. Then we're going to switch over to Batman. First we have Kim Basinger. Then we have Michael Keaton and director Tim Burton together. And then, as I said, we're going to end with Jack Nicholson from the Wolf Junket. There's a lot of stuff to get through, so we're not going to do junket talk.
All right.
Just want to point out that both of these junkets are way before our time. I think you and I both started doing junkets in 1992.
I started actually in 1991, but around the same time anyway.
Yeah, roughly.
Yeah.
These were both 1989, so we weren't there. We were still zygotes.
Relatively, right?
But what's funny is how much you hear Shep Morgan and Gail Murphy on these interviews. I mean, these two were just all over them and sounding exactly the same as they do now. So it's kind of the Shep and Gail show, and we hope you guys enjoy that.
First up is Thomas F. Wilson and Leah Thompson. Can I say something very quickly?
Nope.
No? Okay.
No, I'm sorry. Stop talking. You're done.
I remember in an earlier episode you were talking about how some people, well, we were talking about the Waterworld episode, how the talent, when they come in, they try to put on a brave face, game face, and they answer the questions.
Right.
I was not there. You were not there, but I can hear from the Thomas F. Wilson. He plays Biff.
Yeah, he plays Biff Tannen. He also plays Griff Tannen in Back to the Future 2, which you would know if you had seen it.
Oh my gosh, you're right. And I was wondering when they were. Well, I'll get to that later. And then Leah Thompson, obviously, is
Lorraine McFly.
Okay, so when they're together doing this interview, I could tell just listening to the interview, though they were chipper, and you probably didn't get this. I could feel the tiredness of their whole because they're filming this thing like back to back, and it's just a really huge production from Zemeckis, as most of his films are.
Plus, junkets are exhausting for the stars. I mean, not just this one, but in general.
Yes.
I think, this is 3 days of them just talking for 8 hours straight.
Good point.
So I think, if we're getting them at the end of that, then they're going to sound very different than they would if we got them at the beginning of that.
Right. So that's a little point of reference before we get into the Thomas F. Wilson and Leah Thompson thing. There's a lot of talk about the makeup and getting prepped for their respective roles.
Right. There was a lot of makeup in this one because they're playing old age versions of themselves because they were in the future in 2015. They went ahead in time to 2015, which of course is kind of funny because we're now past that. Yes. And so the world that they depicted was a few years ago, and we don't have flying cars. We don't have any of this stuff. So not all the predictions were true. We don't have self-tying shoes or hoverboards, but it's still a fun movie. Anyways, unless you've got anything else, I mean, do we want to talk about any of their other roles? I mean, Leah Thompson, of course, superstar from Howard the Duck.
Superstar from Howard the Duck. She's continued. We'll postscript these folks later.
All right.
But until then, here is Thomas F. Wilson and Leah Thompson for Back to the Future 2.
Are we supposed to put these on?
Why, thank you. I didn't know it was customary to bring gifts to the actors, but I'll take the Sony.
I guess one of the first questions that can be asked is, both of you or either of you going to be in the third film? You're both in the
We're both in the third film.
Yeah.
Can you tell us if you're in the third film as Western people or?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're in the third film as Western people. Leah is a very good Western person.
What degree of sworn secrecy?
Well, I think Alert Security is about to wrestle us to the ground, but no, actually, well, I play Buford Mad Dog Tannen in 3, Biff's great-great-grandfather.
Check one.
And also you play Biff at the end.
I play Biff at the end. Also, I play it's a dual thing, and
And I play Lorraine at the end, like the end of the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I play a new character, Marty Mcfly.
Tom, there were moments when you looked suspiciously older in Back to the Future 2. Did you have a 20-pound weight tied to your forehead, or how did you?
how did you guess? Wow, my secrets are out. The 20-pound forehead weight. It was pretty difficult. Well, both Leah and I did extensive prosthetic makeups during Back to the Future 2, and it was pretty trying. Depended on the role, but for like the oldest character, the 80-year-old, it took about 6 hours. It took 6 hours to go through the makeup.
Yeah, we were both covered all the way to here. Neck pieces, bald caps, everything was covered. You even had ears, right?
Ears, into my ears, actually glue in the ears.
The first time you looked in the mirror, did you see your own mortality looking back at you, or how did you feel?
Yeesh.
Yeah.
My gosh. Yeah, I mean, I certainly hope not. I certainly hope that that's not the future. And my wife, upon seeing it, said, "Hey, buddy, I'm not going to be around for this guy. Look, you better get back to Holiday Spa, my friend."
How'd you feel, Leah?
It is pretty traumatic. It's shocking, but what's really strange is we would turn to each other sometimes and say, we get the feeling that we looked like this under the makeup. And when they took it off, it was really great.
Yeah, after several days of doing it all day, you begin to accept that that's the way you look.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, in taking off the makeup, it's really odd to stare at this young person's face looking back, saying, "Oh gosh, I'm a young man. Look at me."
Is it any special treat to play such a mean guy as Biff?
A special treat. It's interesting, it's interesting to play the bad guy, the bad guy never gets the girl, and the music doesn't swell when I come onto the screen, and I stand there looking great or anything, but it's always something interesting happening, always plotting and stuff. So it's a lot of fun. But there are days, treating Leah as badly as I treated her, there are days when Biff is a really evil character. This guy is an evil incarnate, a murderous, horrible person. And treating Leah so badly, I found very difficult, in some of those scenes.
Yeah, but it had to be a little fun. It had to be a little fun somewhere.
Oh, sure, it's a lot of fun. Many of the characters, Griff, Biff's grandson, tremendous fun. A guy just completely out in left field with, failed bionic implants and too much electron activity in his brain, making him completely twitchy. So that was a lot of fun. But, so it was pretty balanced between the fun and the serious work.
Did you all ever get a little confused in the course of making this about who was on first or what year it was or whatever?
Well, everything took so long that by the time, you knew what character you're doing after 5 hours of makeup. Oh yeah, this is Lorraine at 80. But sometimes it did get confusing for me about, like, when there were split screens, like where to look and, how did you...
Yeah, it got pretty confusing, but Bob Zemeckis, this guy with just a pulsing brain up there, keeping the entire movie in his mind. You could always consult this technological guru saying, "Bob, where am I? Who am I? What am I doing?" And boom, he'd say, this is what's happening, And
it was always evolving too, so sometimes it was hard to keep up with the evolution of the script. That was hard.
Leah, can you tell us, other than Dolly Parton, who did you base your plastic surgery on? And that sounds rather unusual, the way that you handled that. Tell us about that.
Well, actually, that was the work of a sculptor. That was his inspiration. I believe he used his wife as an... No, I don't know. They sculpted those out of they took a bust of my bust, so to speak, and then sculpted the plastic to make that. But it was a funny joke that we all kind of came up with. And it was sad, too, the idea that Biff made his wife alter herself so much.
I like forced her to breast implant.
Yeah, and it was interesting to see that when you have so much, that people really look a different place than at your eyes most of the time. I felt bad all of a sudden for women like that.
But it didn't encourage you to...
No, as you see, I'm the same as I've been in all 15 of my movies. No, but I did feel very, very small when I took it all off. I did feel...
But they look so real. They look so real. Leah would be in the makeup trailer, without a shirt because they were applying these breasts. And I was always just, getting my makeup and turning around. Oh, my gosh, I'm sorry. Oh, they're fake.
And then everybody would come up and go, oh, and grab them, because it was just plastic.
This is a question for both of you. Who would have thought 3 years ago or whenever it was you began pre-production on Back to the Future 1 that your schedules would be filled up into 1990 or 1991? And do you think you would have said yes had you known that there were going to be 3 of them?
Well, we were already into 2 before they even told us that they were going to split the script and make a 3rd one.
Yeah, we didn't know.
It started as a rumor, and then all of a sudden it became true.
We didn't know they would be back to back, but there were inklings that there would be a sequel during the first Back to the Future. I mean, before the release of the first Back to the Future, not during the filming, because the filming was, had its ups and downs. But then right before the movie came out, they were already saying, I think there's going to be a Back to the Future 2. And then, of course, the videotape came out, and at the end it said to be continued. So we immediately started buying living room furniture.
What particular problems did filming films like these movies were back to back? What special problems were posed in terms of character development or understanding where you were in time? I was a little confused myself as you went backward and forward in time. I imagine it would have been confusing for the both of you. What special problems did it create, if any?
I don't know. It was a... I don't know. Do you have...
Well, I know it's it is a complex story, but it just demanded more concentration. I found, because you're not given the opportunity to mess up here. All you have to call on things that all of this training and work you've done over the years, and just say, hey, it's it's the World Series here. It's not time to mess up. So I'd better know what year it is, and I'd better know how I'm going to act here.
And the hardest thing I think is the stamina it took for everybody to make it through a year of principal photography, which is pretty insane.
That was it. I mean, the fact when people ask you what you do for a living, I don't say actor anymore. I say, I do Back to the Future. Because it just seems like this forever thing. You come in and punch in. Good morning, Leah. Good morning.
Yeah, that was the physical.
Just put that down anyway.
I'd like to find out what you folks think of 2 versus 1 in terms of the movie. I presume that you've seen part 2 by now finished. The movies are markedly different, but I'd like to hear in your words what you feel perhaps separates 1 from 2.
Do you want to start with that?
Okay. All right. Well, I think each of them are very different movies. I think, and you'll find that Back to the Future 3 is very different from its predecessors. Each is a very specific movie dealing with a specific aspect of the story. I think 2 compares at least equally, if not favorably, with 1. It's just a different story. It's not. It doesn't pull the heartstrings as much about meeting the parents, but it is an action. It is an action-packed story, darker in tone, realizing that there are consequences, to be had with time travel. Bad things can happen. I think all that stuff is very interesting.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel like it's got a different tone. It feels to me like a second act of a 3-act play. you know, and the middle of a trilogy, really. And I like that it's so different in tone, in the center of it, the core of it.
Was making it a different experience, though? I mean, you know, what were some of the differences in terms of the production behind the scenes for you guys? Any overall?
It was bigger. I mean, the first one was big, the second one was big, and the third one is huge. I mean, in terms of the amount of people, the amount of the crew, the effects, the trailers. I mean, it's just a huge movie.
And the undertaking of all the characters that both Leah and I are doing,
Yeah.
you know, was huge. I mean, just remembering all this stuff and which characters we were and what lines, and you know, and in those split screen scenes when you know, when I as a young man am acting with myself as a young man, just remembering, you know, which one I am and keeping everything, you know, very separate. So it was really I found it an incredible challenge.
It's not very often you have an opportunity to play such wild and varied characters and aspects of the same person in such a big movie like this, you know. And so they were great characters. I think all the characters are pretty neat.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. Do you have a favorite among all these different views or these different characters that you played?
Well, I liked the alternate Biff character in the 50s with the bazooms. I liked her a lot. I had a lot of fun chewing up the scenery and battling with Biff. I don't know.
No, I think those are the most fun scenes. The characters way out in left field. You know, I liked Griff. I liked Griff a lot because he's just, you know, way out there in the left field bleachers. You know, that guy is nuts. And I also like Biff. Biff Horrific, we called him, the casino owner, who is just, you know, absolute evil incarnate.
The Antichrist.
Yeah, I mean, just the real extremes of character, I think, are the most fun to play because you're just kind of throwing stuff out there.
Oh, yeah. It was fun.
You mentioned that the script went through a lot of changes during filming. How different is the movie that we saw from the original script that you read?
God, it's hard to even remember. They refine so much, Bob Zemeckis and Bob Gale. They're constantly refining and fixing and adding and changing and sculpting. It's really a neat process. They're never content. It's like always.
And the amazing thing is that every time it gets better.
I know, that's what's weird. Usually rewrites get worse and worse.
And every time it's just honing it down. So yeah, the script did change. We got a new color of page. Oh. My gosh, a lot. You know,
there's not a white page in it. It's all blue and yellow and green. And you know, I got really sick of putting them, gluing them together. But yeah, and I was even reading when I was doing my research to start this movie. I was reading my first script from Back to the Future 1, and it was interesting to me how much it had even changed from the final script to the screen. I thought it was pretty interesting. I didn't remember how much they refined.
Question for Tom. Michael J. Fox is such a nice guy. I mean, on screen, no matter what he does, he's always a nice guy. Mm-hmm. How could you be so mean to him? How did you find that in yourself, the ability to just be so awful to this nice guy?
Yes, acting. It was pretend. It was a lot of fun. You know, I mean, Michael's a great guy. We got along, you know, we got along very, very well. And we knew that it was an acting role. Neither of us are those kind of method actors where I was actually believing that I was this evil person. I mean, if I did that with a character like Biff, I would be in the funny farm right now, you know. So, I mean, we just had fun with it. And in the times when it needed to be serious, you know, we rose to the occasion and took it very seriously in the scenes. But most of the time, we just had a blast, and as soon as they yelled cut, we'd be laughing.
Both of you are pretty comedic, and what was life on the set? Any bizarre experiences? Any ad-libs that come to mind?
Ad-libs, well, repeatable for the, no. My gosh, well, I don't know. It was a pretty...
Practical jokes. I mean, you've all been around each other for a long time. You get close.
We have, and in that familiarity, I think that, you know, the jokes just become kind of looking at each other, you know? We've been through so much, it just becomes that acceptance and friendship that, you know, there weren't a lot of practical jokes because, I mean, it was a huge undertaking. This movie was a lot of business. You know, there wasn't a lot of, oh, look, you know, Tom's in a monkey suit, everybody. You know, hold it, stop the cameras, you know, waste a whole lot of money. No, it was pretty serious business, and there was a lot of fun to be had just because we're all friends.
Yeah, we would sometimes. In the makeup trailer, it got pretty insane.
Yeah, that was it. The makeup trailer was the most fun. This unbelievably black humor of being in this really difficult situation and just really joking about it.
After like the 5th day of having this makeup put on and your face is all raw and you have to go in and sit there and you know what it's
our brains were absolutely fried.
It was fun.
One question. Michael J. Fox's baby was born during the filming. Did you do anything special when Sam Fox arrived?
Took some time off. Right?
Yeah, when Sam Fox arrived, actually what we did was get very busy because Michael, I think as a part of his contract, got about a week off or something like that. So he went to be a new father, and we dove into the movie making, and it got very intense for us. We were doing I think we were doing that hoverboard chase sequence. So while Tracy was in labor, I was, I think, hanging upside down from a crane.
In a business that's so well known for having to create friendships very quickly, and then they last about 4 or 5 months, and then you're lucky if you see that person 2 or 3 years later.
We hate each other now.
Do you consider yourselves lucky that you've had the opportunity to work with these same people again and again? And can you give a little insight into how this is different than any other picture you've ever worked on, with that in mind?
Well, it was such a huge hit, and it was so beloved, you know, that's unusual. You're lucky if you get a couple of those in your career, really. And I thought it was really nice to see everybody after all those years, and like working with Bob Zemeckis, he's such a great director. You'd always want to work with him. I mean, it was exciting.
Yeah, I mean, there are no stories of internal problems or intrigue or anything like that. And it was wonderful to see old friends again, people that you've gone through a difficult experience doing the first Back to the Future that we ended up very proud of course. But to come back and do it again was like a class reunion. You know, just break out the yearbooks and ask, what have you been doing?
Excuse me, we have time for one more question.
See to finish number 3?
We have yet to finish number 3.
Are you still on location?
I've just returned from location about a week and a half ago, and Leah was up there. I think they've completed the location now, and they're about to go to Arizona or Utah or something.
When do they expect to be done?
In a month?
About a month, end of the year, maybe early January.
Quick background question. When did you first get interested in acting? On both of you?
When I was about 22.
What was that? What inspired you?
I used to be a dancer, and it just seemed like a logical progression.
I was, I was putting on shows for some reason very early in life, and in first grade, I actually went to the nuns of my school and asked them if I could borrow the auditorium and put on a production of Robinson Crusoe, because I thought it would be really neat to have fights with, pirates and things on stage. So I did that and kept just putting on shows until the shows have gotten much bigger. But I'm still putting on shows, Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, you guys. Now wait, do they switch rooms or do we switch rooms?
Oh no.
Do we leave or stay here?
No, we need to stay. Come here with us.
Okay, we are back. Now, I know you have a couple of things to say. I wanted to say.
I do. Sometimes it can be frustrating to listen to these tapes because there's such an obvious follow-up question hanging in the air, and nobody asks it. And in this case, more than once, Tom referred to how difficult it was to make the first Back to the Future, and nobody asked him to elaborate on that and explain what was so tough about it. I mean, come on, were they even paying attention? Guys, he was handing it to you. But nobody took it. Oh well. The other thing I wanted to say, we do try not to get political on this show. I mean, that's not what we're about. But I do have to point something out because it's hilarious. By now, I think we all know that the Nightmare 1985 Biff in Back to the Future 2 was based on Donald Trump. Bob Gale, who wrote the movie, has confirmed that yes, he absolutely did have Trump in mind when he wrote it. So it's pretty funny to hear Tom Wilson, who played him, refer to Biff in that sequence as evil incarnate. I'm not making a statement here, but whatever side of things you're on, you do have to admit that it was funny that he said that.
Very cool. Very cool. And, you know, Tom Wilson, Biff is his most, I guess, the role that he's most recognized for, but...
He wrote a song about that, which you can find on YouTube.
What?
Yeah, just about answering some of the questions that he always gets asked. It's pretty funny.
Okay.
Look that up.
Okay, wait, but after that, I mean, he had a little role in Big Love. I mean, that's the main thing. The TV series, he appeared on the TV series Adventure Time, which a lot of kids know about. I mean, he's been in a lot of pop culture stuff like Spider-Man, Shattered Dimensions, the video game, voice of Electro. So, I mean, he's had a lot of credits post Back to the Future, but the good thing is, I mean, give him credit, he started in probably one of the most iconic films in cinema history, and he continues to. I mean, his last one of his recent credits is this film that this TV series that probably a lot of people haven't checked out. It's called Troll Hunters: Tales of Arcadia. Sounds like an interesting.
It's a Netflix show. It's animated.
Oh, okay.
It's actually really good.
Oh, you've watched?
I have.
You like it?
Yeah.
You like it? You just said it's actually really good. I'm listening to a real-time interview with Matt Levitz.
No, you're not. I'm just sitting right in front of you. We're co-hosting a podcast.
He also played a governor in a short-lived ABC series called The Mayor, which I actually attended the press conference for.
Right. David Diggs' show.
Yeah, I'd never. He was there. So he has credits. Leah Thompson, on the other hand, after Back to the Future, she's married to filmmaker Howard Deutsch, and she's had quite the career post Back to the Future. Most notably, for me, I was a huge fan of, for several seasons, for the TV series. When it started, it was called ABC Family. Now it's called Freeform. That TV series, Switched at Birth. She played the matriarch, one of the mothers in Switched at Birth, and
never saw it.
It lasted for 104 episodes, 2011 to 2017.
Wow, I missed out.
So credit to Leah Thompson for that. That's and she's been in a whole. Post Back to the Future, she was in the Beverly Hillbillies. She was in, she had her own series, which you and I remember from the 90s, mid-90s. You remember Caroline in the City, lasted 97 episodes. So she's actually had a solid acting career. Also, on top of the solid acting career, she's also a director. In the year 2007, she released her cinematic feature debut, The Year of Spectacular Men, which, by the way, stars her daughter, Madeline Deutsch. Huh. So, yeah, one of her daughters, Madeline Deutsch.
Did not know that.
Yeah, her daughter, Madeline Deutsch, actually wrote the screenplay for The Year of Spectacular Men. Obviously, Madeline Deutsch is an up-and-coming writer-actress. Her sister is Zoe Deutsch, whose career is also taking off as well. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, little Leah Thompson information for everybody.
Good for them.
I think, yeah.
All right, so moving on now, we have a 35-minute press conference. Two people that we just heard from, Leah Thompson and Tom Wilson, they are at this press conference, so we're going to hear from them again. But they don't do a lot of talking here. It's actually mostly director Robert Zemeckis.
Yes.
Bob Gale is there. Neil Canton, the producer, is there, but he barely opens his mouth at all.
Same thing with Gale. He barely opens his mouth as well, too.
Yeah. It's really kind of the Robert Zemeckis show, which is fine. I mean, he's a legendary director. In fact, you want to name some of his credits? Who would we know Robert Zemeckis from?
You quizzing me, sir?
Yes, I am. You don't have IMDb open. You're not ready.
I literally do not have IMDb, but I will say this post.
Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
I don't know. I still don't know, but I know Zemeckis directed it, because I don't remember the movie that much. I know it's an animated live action with Bob Hoskins.
It was Judge Doom.
Oh, really? Is that right?
Yes.
Oh,
who was played by Christopher Lloyd, and I think they may have worked together on something else. I can't remember.
Oh boy, here you go. Okay, so yeah, along with the Back to the Future franchise,
Romancing the Stone.
Yes. What about Forrest Gump?
Right.
And you alluded to, with our Tom Hanks interview for Saving Private Ryan, you alluded to Castaway. A lot of Zemeckis' stuff is, and obviously
and the Polar Express, also with Tom Hanks.
Yes, and the Polar Express, his forays into animation. Polar Express. He's done a lot of films. I mean,
more recently, things like Flight.
Zemeckis is. I mean, there's one Zemeckis film we're going to his filmography that I haven't seen, and since I'm a Hitchcock fan, I really want to see. It's called What Lies Beneath, with Michelle Pfeiffer and Harrison Ford.
Yeah,
remember
I saw that.
Yeah, so I don't know if you like that movie, but he's.
Yeah, it's all right.
And talking about his recent work, he's done.
Death Becomes Her.
Death Becomes Her. Yes, yes, and of course, allied with Marion Cotillard and Brad Pitt. So we're talking about one of the biggest filmmakers of all time, possibly, especially around our generation. So it would make sense that he was a big and prominent during this Back to the Future press conference. Do you have anything else to say before we get into
there's
the
a beep edit. And we've talked about what that is before. The cassette came to the end of the side. We had to flip it, and we lost 10, 15 seconds. So we put a beep there to signify there's an edit.
Okay, so here we go with Robert Zemeckis, Bob Gale, Michael J. Fox, and producer...
Right, and Tom Wilson and Leah Thompson. Oh, and I did want to say one more thing. Michael J. Fox is not there at the beginning of this interview. He's running late, so he comes in at about the 15-minute mark. So he's there for like the last 20 minutes. So he's there for more than half.
Okay, so here we go with the press conference for B to the F to the 2. That's how I call it, even though I haven't seen it. Here we go.
Here's Juice, Bob Zemeckis, director, producer of the film, Bob Gale, Tom Wilson,
Where should
Bill
we
Cannon, anywhere you want. Leah Thompson. There's 2 portable mics around. If you'll find, just keep raising your hand. And again, we're taping this, so if you need tapes of this, He's coming, he's running late. Tomorrow. Michael will be down probably about 15 minutes. He's running late on his TV stuff.
Hey, there's no mics down here.
Yeah. Oh wait, we've got to go the other way. There you go.
Here, I got two.
There's 2 over here.
Leave another one.
Well, yeah, here you go. One.
Yeah, fine, thank you. I got. Do you need an extra one out here?
But where's Michael?
Yeah, I got.
Here. Okay.
There should be one left over now.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, I'm gonna have It's gonna get very hot here in about 5 minutes. This is the ego one.
Just like the Donahue show.
Is the caller there? Minneapolis, go ahead, please.
Mr. Zemeckis, was you written before or after you knew you did not have the participation of Crispin Glover?
It was written before. Before we knew that Crispin Glover was going to decide not to do the film.
Can you tell us why he didn't do the film, and did it have any effect on what you wanted for the film?
Oh no, it didn't have any effect. I mean, I wanted, obviously, I wanted the movie to be pure by having everyone from the cast come back. But I can completely understand and respect Crispin's idea to having, he felt he had already done the character and didn't feel like doing it again. And I can understand that completely. That's one of the risks we all take when we decide to do a sequel.
Can you tell us the psychology, over to your right here, to your right?
Yes.
Tell us the psychology in the background in making 2 movies in one, so to speak, and the sort of history of that, please.
You mean the 2 movies in part 2 or part 2 and
part 2 and part 3?
Well, what happened was, as the story was evolving, when Bob was getting really serious about fleshing out the screenplay, we kept coming up against this one problem. Actually, it was a lot of problems, but they were good problems. The problem was that we had a tremendous wealth of ideas about time travel and things we could do with the film, and we wanted to put them in the movie. And every time we wrote the screenplay as a single film, it felt like we were not doing justice to all the ideas. All the ideas were being shortchanged. When we expanded it into a trilogy, it felt very good, and it felt like it's the way it should be. So we presented that idea to the studio and the cast, and we all signed on for the long haul.
Can you tell us just economically? I mean, do you save a third?
You save not that much. No, I think you save money because you don't have to shut down and start up, which are costs that are very real when you make a film. But you save a little bit of money, and you're able to economize a few things, like if you know you're going to have a scene in one set that for both films you can do both scenes and you don't have to reconstruct the set twice, which is what we had to do when we started the second movie. So that's a savings, but it's basically, it costs what 2 movies would cost.
There have been some complaints that the plot is very difficult to follow, to know which character is at what particular time and in what period of their life. And now that they say that audiences' attention span is 10 minutes, how do you think they will respond to this, where you really have to pay attention? And did you have any...
Well, we weren't worried about, I mean, we can't worry about, I mean, it's sad if that's true. I mean, we can't, if the audience's attention span is only 10 minutes, then they're not going to understand this movie.
People had that complaint about the first one too. Some people thought that there was too much in it for people to follow, but obviously the audience proved that wrong.
I think that if you understand going in that it's a movie that you have to pay attention to, and I mean, and it is, and I don't, and I just as a filmmaker feel that you have to assume that the audience is going to bring something to the film, in the screenings that we've had with people, we haven't had a lot of comment about that being a problem.
Mr. Zemeckis, what you know about the movie industry, you may be able to enlighten us a little bit. I know when they did Superman that they shot scenes that would prep them for Superman 2. But do you know the history of this back-to-back stuff? I mean, where does Back to the Future 2 and 3 fall into the history of sequel-dom in film?
I understand that we were the first American film to do it consciously before we did anything. I mean, before we started at all. That's my understanding. I think the Superman movie, they were going to do that and then they didn't. Because they had 1 and 2 had a different director, didn't it? Or are we talking?
They did shoot some scenes.
They did shoot some scenes, but then they shut it down and they ran out. Yeah, they didn't. And I know that the Three Musketeers, which was also the Salkins, they were the same producers. That was just a movie that they split in half, and they didn't up front intend to do the movie as two films. So I think we're the first one to actually do this, consciously.
Our big question here is, again, just give us a few of the whys. Why do this? Why?
Oh, well, yeah. The why is well, first of all, knowing that presenting, having found out that we've got this story that works as a trilogy. Knowing that, we figured, well, okay, and knowing that it took us 4 years to assemble, the players involved in the movie, and we couldn't get Crispin to do it, so one fell out. We said, well, what we have to do here is we have to decide whether if we're going to do this as a trilogy, we all have to do it, and we have to get it finished, and we have to get it in the can, because we wouldn't want to, both for the audience and for ourselves as filmmakers, be in a situation where the second movie were to say end the way it does now, and then there was no real promise of a third. That I think would be irresponsible, and we just didn't want to get into a situation where our careers would get out of sync and we would never be able to get everyone back together, because the trilogy is very very much concerned with these characters. I mean, we don't introduce any main new characters, and it's the saga of these characters in this town and this time machine.
What happened to the original actress who played Jennifer in the first film?
She had some personal problems and decided that she couldn't do the picture.
Yeah.
As you were shooting the original, did any of the ideas and story developments for parts 2 and 3 occur to you, or was that completely written after the fact? Completely
after the fact. I mean, when we did the first movie, we had no idea that the film would be as successful as it was, and it's interesting because everyone thinks that this first movie was designed with a sequel in mind, and in fact it wasn't. It was just a joke that we did at the end.
And then the joke was on us when we suddenly realized,
right. Oh no, now we got it right.
Here's the first scene of the movie. What do we do?
Once you decided to go for a 2-3 situation. What kind of problems and solutions did you arrive at to find where you break it so you excite the people to see the next one, but you don't turn them off that they feel they got gypped on the second one?
Well, obviously what we didn't want to do is, end the movie on what you would call a cliffhanger, which is what the old series used to do, where the guy was going over the cliff in the car and they would freeze frame and then they'd say, we knew that we couldn't do that. What we had to do is we had to end the story for the first movie, and then what actually happens is it's not actually a cliffhanger at the end of the movie, it's sort of the promise of the start of the third movie. That's the way I like to look at it, and that's what we decided to do. The second movie we feel is resolved. The book is burned and all is, and Biff Horrific is put back, and
Did you go to school on Empire Strikes Back?
We looked at that. I guess if I have to choose two models of sequels, which is a term that we don't like to really use because it is a sequel, but we like to call it a continuation. But we were looking very closely at the Star Wars trilogy and at The Godfather Part 2. Those are our favorites.
I had just two quick questions. One is just on the concept of time travel. If someone is in 1985 and they get in a time machine and disappear and go to the future to 2015, at what point do they come back and get married and have kids so that the kids would be there in 2015?
Yep, that's a good question. Because in fact, if you wanted to extrapolate that down, they would drop off. They would have stepped into a time warp or something in the year 1985, and there'd be no record of their existence.
But the fact that they're
But that's
there
one way of looking at it.
The fact that they're there in the future automatically assumes that they get back.
That they get back.
Okay.
So that's the other way of looking at the paradox. So we've gone through every possible permutation, and you might be able to poke a hole in one or two, but we will have an answer for you.
Okay. The second question I had is in the past couple of years, a lot has been said and written about the portrayal of blacks in film. And in this movie, the only black character who has a speaking line is the guy who is in the Biff-orific version, and he's sucker, get out of my house, that kind of thing. How do you explain?
Well, there's the mayor. There's the mayor of Hill Valley too. And he's in there too. And there's a police officer, Foley, and it's a black officer. Yeah.
As a director, are you sensitive to that issue?
Well, I think that my personal feeling about it is that I really feel that you have to, if I portray blacks only as police officers in my films, that's not true to the world. And I think that if blacks and all minorities are going to be truly equal, they have to be portrayed in movies the way that that way that you would portray anyone in there. I feel that what would be really wrong would be to eliminate them from the film completely. If I did that, you wouldn't have a comment, but it wouldn't be true.
Could you talk about why the second film has a much harder, nastier, more violent tone than the first?
Well, it doesn't in its totality, I don't think. I think that would be your opinion. I think that there are things in the, I guess the main reason why there is some of that in the film is that it's a different story. It's a story where the villain has to become a villain, and the dramatic thrust of the movie, you can't have drama if you don't have conflict. And so in order for our character's mission to be one that is of importance and one that is life and death, we have to set up what is the problem, and the problem is an ugly one. And there wasn't anything as dark in the first movie, but this is another story. This movie had to, in my opinion, had to have a bit of that in there.
Leah, for the actors, Leah, Tom, if you could tell us about playing so many characters in one film. Tell us what was involved in that, and tell us a little bit about what was involved in terms of playing characters so much older than yourself, some of the processes you went through to really put that across.
Well, it was a very unusual opportunity to play different aspects of the same person, and we had the help of the makeup.
Is there any method, though, to coming up with the magic? I mean, you know, how do you get to the point where you're in your 20s and suddenly you're 80 years old? What do you think about?
Well, part of it is a physical action. The makeup makes you feel like by 5 hours of makeup, you feel like you're a different person, and we all you feel older. And they changed our bodies, and we would change our voices, and we changed our voices. We changed the way we walked. And tried to also not just imagine ourselves as being 80, but our characters as 80, which was or 50 or whatever.
Yeah, I found it. I found it pretty challenging, and the changes in age had to be subtle as well. You know, I mean, the reaction after putting on all this makeup is to really hunch over and shuffle along and do a caricature of an old person, the image of an old person that's in your mind, as opposed to doing a realistic, believable older person. But doing all those characters out there was pretty challenging.
Hi guys.
Hey, how's it going? Hey, Mike's here.
A last question for Bob Zemeckis here before we move on. Is this definitely the last, or this premise seems to have limitless possibilities? Do you rule out the possibility of another one? Or?
Well, shall we all speak for Chris? No. No. I would think that, and of course I think that the trilogy is final at the end of the third act. It's at the end of the third film. I think we will all want to, we've done it with we will have done it with a certain amount of integrity to the original film, and the story when you see them all together will rest as a piece, and I think we'll all move on to other things after that.
I thought we.
What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say I thought we'd go like to Ohio in 1985 and do like a Back to the Future, Family Ties Christmas special. It'd be perfect. Wrap it all up for me.
Make it like we want to do it when we're all a bunch of old farts. Do Back to the Future 4 in the year 2015.
Biff and Lorraine on the road pictures with singing and dancing, driving a car.
You mentioned The Godfather as one of your role models for these kinds of things. Would you ever cut these all together then into?
They could be. I don't think I'll do it, but I think this film could. It won't be like The Godfather though, where you could separate the second movie and put it on either side. But what you can do is you just cut off, splice all three of them together, and it'll be one big movie.
Could I ask Bob Gale, please?
Yeah.
Hello, here. How do I understand that you and Bob Zemeckis plot the movies together and then you write them? How does that come about? How much leeway does it give you?
I'm sorry?
When you write, you're the screenwriter.
Right.
Okay, and you and Bob Zemeckis, you first plot the movie.
Right,
as I
we worked out
understand.
the story.
Okay, and then how do you take off with the screenwriting?
I know what the story's going to be. I know who the characters are, so then I start putting it down on paper and rewriting it and rewriting it and rewriting it. Because most of writing is rewriting.
Right. The scenes are outlined. We kind of say, well, what if we have them do this? What if we have them do that? And then Bob goes and does the painful work of actually figuring out how that's all going to be done.
And then Bob reads it and he says, well, maybe we could do something like this. And then we start talking and we change it again. Then we get out there with the cast and they start doing stuff and add to it and change it around, and it's an ongoing process.
I make up all my.
It never ends. And then Michael makes up all his own lines.
We do our own makeup too.
This is a question for all you. I was wondering if there was a time machine like the one used in the movie that actually existed, if you would at all be tempted to use it on your own life, either to go to the future or go back to the past.
Oh, I know the answer to that. Do you guys want? No? No? You know what? I would not go to the future. And I would only.
Why not?
Well, because in making these movies and writing them and working with Bob on the stories, what we realized was that when you go to a fortune teller, they only ever give you good news, and there's a very subtle thing in the movie, and that is that Michael's character never sees his own future. I don't know if you saw that or not, but that's an important plot device for us to be able to continue the three movies. Anyway, I feel strongly about that, having been through this experience, and I would only want to go to the past if I could get out. But I'd like to go to the past. If I knew I could leave, I wouldn't want to be stuck in the past. And it'd be interesting to just observe history, from the outside. But I think knowing information about the future is kind of dangerous.
This is a question for Michael.
Mm-hmm. There's an on button.
Hello?
Did I
Yeah, oh,
clear
great.
that up for you?
You got to show leg again.
I'm sorry?
You got to show leg again. That was great.
Bitch and gams, huh?
That was great.
He put us all out of business.
I'm trying to figure out whether I should deny playing that character. It wasn't me. It was some girl.
I loved you 10 times more for that.
Well, thank you. I kind of hope if I put on a dress that it would work out well for me. It was pretty bizarre.
How did it feel looking in the mirror?
Tempting.
For what?
Oh, I don't know. That was weird because the whole idea behind doing that character is that the joke is that there is no joke. There's no punchline. It's not like Eric Idle, where you go look at Eric Idle and he's like, hey, what are you doing? It's none of that, and it's not like Tony Curtis or Jack Lemmon where this is just the girls. So. And I think if there was an actress who looked a lot like me, then she would have got the job. But Bob proposed it, and it's not all that he proposed actually. Bob proposed it, and we just kind of got into it. And I talked to my wife, and I talked to some people about the female movements and attitudes, physical attitudes, and things like that. And did a lot of work. I actually watched. Little Darlings about 40 times, which means I really love my work, and I got it together, and then you're all together, and Bron Roylance did my makeup, who's a great beautician, and went out there and it was in front of like 50 crew guys that I knew in a dress, and I had to it took me an hour to just get myself together and stop blushing.
Did your wife see you in that outfit?
She chose not to show up too often when I was. She saw some pictures of it, and I think I don't know. She may have been troubled. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, she thought it was cute. That seemed to be the consensus, that I was fairly cute.
Back to the Future 1 had such a tremendous rock soundtrack, and you opted to not repeat that in 2. Could you tell me what your thought was behind that?
It was a logistics problem. We couldn't figure out what the music of the future might be. We didn't even want to try and tackle that one. And we're only ever in the past and the future in the movie. We're never in 1989, so where would you stick a 1989 song? No place for it to belong in the film.
Okay. Michael, can you talk a little bit about what the artistic challenges were of playing, the 7 or 8 different characters that you played and how you kept them all straight in the timeline, and what the just physical challenges are of starring in a movie, in 2 movies back to back for 11 months in a row?
Well, you need a really talented taskmaster, which we had, and in terms of the characters, actually a limitation of the technology was actually a bonus in the performance, which was that this computer robot thing that they use, this VistaGlide Tondro camera, if you're going to do 3 characters with it, if you only do 2 and you leave the next one for the next day and there's an earthquake or even like a 2.2 or a janitor bumps into it, you got to do the whole thing again. So in the interest of safety, we do it all on the same day. So there was a real freshness in your mind. We'd start out doing, or at least I would, start out doing old Marty at the beginning of the day because you'd get there early and it would take about 4 hours. Do him, keep track in my mind what I did, and have a video recording of it so you can see it, you can see his spot in it. Then go peel all that off, put the beauty makeup on, and do a couple stair walks to get the calves looking good. Come out, be Marlene, do that, and have an idea what room I want to leave for Marty Jr., and then go back, peel that off. Now my face looks like crap, and I look like, you know, Marty, who does nothing but eat crap and watch television. So it's all, he looks rotten. Come out and do him, and the great thing was, you know, Marty Jr., given that he's just kind of like, you know, Jerry Lewis on paint thinner, I knew that he was going to be the most upstaging character, and he was last. So it was just a matter of, you know, it's just kind of mental chess, and it's a lot of fun. And I was, you know, I really pigged out on it because in the first movie, because I was the tour guide or the audience's point of view, I remember having more than a few moments where I would say, man, I wish I could do that. But to be, in this movie, to be the, you know, the kind of tour guide, but to also be one or two points of interest along the way, it was kind of fun. And in terms of the physical challenge, you know, how does it go, Bob? Pain is temporary.
Yeah.
Film is forever.
That's right.
That's
we
it.
hung that on his trailer door.
You just do it.
Marty doesn't see his own future, but we do, and it's pretty unterrific. Is there going to be any part 4 where we would maybe fix that?
Maybe in part 3.
Part 3 we may fix that.
It's the plot thickens.
I haven't read it.
No, we would never
No,
let that
it's like-
hang. We would never leave that hanging into
Yeah,
it. Everything's going to be wrapped up
It all
at the
kind of
end of
gets
part
fixed up.
3.
I think an interesting thing about the 3 movies is that what's worked out really well is that part 1 had that kind of gentle nature and the, you know, that familial thing. And I think just as a necessity of the structure, you know, part 2 just zips along. And I think that a lot of the emotions and a lot of the familial, you know, kind of heartstring aspects of the story are what get wrapped up in part 3. So it lays out really well. Guys, good work.
Well, was your makeup for all 3 of you? Did it take 4 hours, like every day, to put that makeup on?
Sometimes longer.
I'd like to get some anecdotes.
I don't know what they're whining about. It took half an hour. Nothing.
I'd like to hear some anecdotes about what it was like to sit there for 4 hours and go through that age transition.
Wasn't a pretty picture. We looked like aliens for about 3 of those hours. Bald-headed, white face.
Yeah, it evoked about the blackest humor I've ever experienced, you know, in the makeup trailer. It was really, and
I would never go near it.
Yeah.
You would sometimes, you'd say, I'm sorry.
I never went in there. I was scared to go in there.
Yeah, well, you came in once when they were taking it off, and I was saying, stop it, make him watch, make him watch.
Were you together, though, being made up?
We were together.
They were together. I was in my own trailer. Okay, all right. Not the nice guy that you think he is. My own trailer, damn it. Yeah, mine was, you know, the only thing for me is my eyes are really sensitive, and the contact lenses were the worst part for me, really. Of all the goop that was all over my face, I just couldn't stand to have contact lenses in. And for some reason, it would take like a half hour, 45 minutes to get those lenses in. And there was a real turnover in these people because they couldn't get the lenses in because my eyes would react, and people would, I think, quit, you know, and say, I'm not going back in there to do that to him again. And they'd send in somebody else, and it would be the same thing. And I, you know, had to catch up with these people and say, it's not you, my eyes won't take it. And every once in a while you get, some will glue down, and, you know, one eye will be smaller than the other, and you have to go back and fix it. But it's pretty weird after a while. You lose yourself, as you can feel it as, you know, that's part of being able to do the characters. You can watch yourself disappear. And the whole time you're sitting there and you're making faces, especially the first few times you get the appliances on, and you're making everyday, you know, physical motor, you know, reactions and manipulations that you normally do, but they have this whole new effect because it's a new face. So a lot of your best character work, I think, is done in your homework is done just sitting in that chair going, people think you're nuts, you know, but.
I thought it was interesting how people would react differently to you if you looked different. And that was interesting to me. I found that kind of sad. It's like, I'm still the same girl.
How did they react differently to you?
It was unnerving for me in the case of when Leah was really like the little old lady, because you always wanted her like to, you know, what was really weird is then when Leah would like, you know, stretch and start to dance on the corner of the set because, you know,
Grandma.
Yeah, because it would be unnerving.
Like Lillian Gish on steroids.
Yeah, and the other thing is when Michael was in the old Marty makeup, it was sculpted as a frown, and you're not used to seeing him frown all the time. He's always the opposite, and so I would constantly think something was wrong. I go, what's wrong? You go, what? And he's like smiling underneath the stuff. So it gets to you when you're doing this for hours and hours and hours.
Is it scary seeing yourself older after 4 hours?
Scary seeing yourself in a dress.
It's scary knowing you're going to have to do it for another 3 weeks.
Well, it is. It actually what our makeup people did, and they got photos from your parents, and they actually try and use your face structure and assume what it's going to look
My
like.
dad didn't know that until you just said that.
But they do that sort of thing and make it look really close to what they expect they're going to age like if you don't take care of yourself.
Question for Michael.
Mm-hmm.
You've made 2 very big movies this year. This movie, of course, and also Casualties of War. Very different sorts of characters. Do you consider yourself more of a dramatic actor now, more of a comedic actor, both? How do you feel about that?
I don't really think about it. I just in the fortunate position where people offer me different scripts, and I don't have an agenda for myself, and to not be cynical about it, but I mean, look around. There's enough of you out here to figure out what it is we do and why that I can save my time. I just do whatever comes next, and I did have a feeling that, especially between Back to the Future 1 and Back to the Future 2, and with Family Ties running all the way through that, there was a real secure place for me in terms of being that kind of accessible character that people know and perhaps think of as a stereotype or the typical Michael J. Fox or whatever. That I thought I would be foolish not to exploit the opportunity to do other things, because after this movie, I mean, who knows what'll happen? So I just had to take my shots when I could get them. But I had no grand plan, and I have no statement to make about myself as an actor beyond the fact that I really like to do it, and I'll do as many different things as I can do. But I'm really not trying to plant a seed in anyone's head or say that I'm one thing and not another, or that I can stretch or can grow or can whatever. I mean, I'm just, it's a privilege to do this for a living. It's a privilege to have people offer you things, and if you just keep going back to the same place because it works, I think ultimately it's going to be disappointing.
A question for Michael. Talking about doing another role. With Back to the Future 3, there's the Western. It obviously looks with the trailer, the teaser at the end, that Doc and Marty Mcfly are in a Western. You probably grew up watching Westerns. Mm-hmm. Is it like a fantasy come true, and did you learn to ride a horse?
Oh, absolutely. It's the greatest. There was a really great moment when I got on a horse, and I had to deliver a kind of an important kind of climactic line, where I had to go da 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 and take off on my horse, and my horse reared up, and like went boom, and then took off. And I was all over the place. I went back and looked at the video playback and said, "Look at the horse that reared up!" And I can't believe it's me. I mean, I up to this point, my height was the only thing I had in common with Alan Ladd. So it's kind of cool to see me in a Western. I enjoyed it a lot. I'm enjoying it. We're still doing it.
Question for Mr. Zemeckis. One thing that's very unusual about the packaging of 2 and 3 is that usually between sequels there's a long refractory period of 1.5 years or 2 years. These movies are coming out, I guess, about 8 months apart. Can you tell me a little bit about the decision to use that strategy?
Well, it's never been done, so it's been thought out and figured. We hope it's right. I mean, the reason for that is usually because it takes that 2 years to make the other movie and to write the script and that sort of thing. And so having been able to do it, the prevailing wisdom is, well, the movie's in the can, so there's no reason to hold on to it just for convention. So it's a new thing and it's never been done. So hopefully it'll work out okay.
Michael, I'm in the back.
Excuse me, we have time for exactly one more question.
Ouch, well, I'm glad I have the mic. Michael,
yes.
Marty Mcfly got to see his son McFly Jr., and you have an addition to the family. If you could maybe say something. How does it feel to be a dad?
It feels great. It feels great. I hope that, well, I think that I'm in a better shape in terms of fatherhood than Marty. But it's great. It's a lot of fun. I think that people have asked me how that affected what I did, which is weird in a way because there's both such different things. I mean, my personal life and what I'm doing. But when I was playing old Marty, first of all, when you're a father, for the first time, it gives you a new appreciation for your parents. I mean, I'm sure anybody who's been a first-time parent knows, and you rethink and you have a very different understanding of your parents, and I think a lot more empathetic, and so I think it made me a little less rough on old Marty, because I was thinking poor dads. Nobody appreciates dads, but it's great. It's a lot of fun. He's a great kid. He's got a great mom.
Is there a best and a worst part about it?
No, just the best part.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we're back with Matt Levitz.
Hello again.
Hello, Matt. With very insightful stuff on Back to the Future 2.
Well, Robert Zemeckis brought up an interesting point that Back to the Future 2 and 3 were the very first pair of sequels ever to be filmed back-to-back. So I was curious what films have followed in their footsteps and done the same thing in the years since, shooting more than one movie in a series without taking a break in between them. So here's what I came up with. The Lord of the Rings trilogy, The Matrix Reloaded, and The Matrix Revolutions. Kill Bill, Volumes 1 and 2, which was reportedly shot as one film and then edited into two, but I still think it counts. Pirates of the Caribbean 2 and 3, Dead Man's Chest and At World's End. Clint Eastwood's Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima. In Sweden, the second and third movies in the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo trilogy, The Girl Who Played with Fire and The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2. The Twilight Saga, Breaking Dawn, Part 1 and Part 2, The Hobbit Trilogy, The Hunger Games, Mockingjay, Part 1 and Part 2, 50 Shades Darker and 50 Shades Freed, Avengers Infinity War and its currently untitled sequel, and coming up, at least at the time of the taping of this episode, 4 Avatar sequels are being planned to shoot back-to-back. So Back to the Future 2 and 3 doing this really did lay the foundation for many more productions to come.
And that's part of Zemeckis' MO. He likes being a trendsetter in different parts of filmmaking, which makes it just one of his strengths, I think, as a storyteller. So.
Right. Well, like when he set up his digital division and they made Beowulf and the Polar Express and Christmas Carol, he was really trying to kickstart that whole technology, motion capture for animated films.
Yeah.
Now, Zemeckis said that after the third film, he was done with Back to the Future. There would be no more sequels, and he has stayed true to his word. In fact, just recently, there have been some new rumors flying around that maybe they were thinking about doing some more, and Zemeckis stepped forward once again and said, no, definitely not. Not as long as he and Bob Gale are alive, and even after that, they will both instruct their estates not to ever let it happen. So they feel pretty strongly about it. Having said that, though, there was an animated TV series that ran between 1991 and 1993. It was 3 seasons, 26 episodes. It featured live-action segments with Christopher Lloyd, science experiments with Bill Nye the Science Guy, because why not? And the voice talents of Mary Steenburgen as Clara, Thomas Wilson as Biff, and Homer Simpson himself, Dan Castellaneta, as Doc Brown. So interestingly, Christopher Lloyd was happy to do the live-action segments, but he didn't want to do the voice work. Marty Mcfly was voiced by professional voice actor David Kaufman, who Nickelodeon fans may recognize as the voice of Danny Phantom. I guess he must do a really good Michael J. Fox impression because he also provided the voice of Stuart Little in that animated TV series. But anyway, the complete Back to the Future animated series can be found on Amazon, or you can watch individual episodes for free on YouTube.
Very cool.
Okay, I have one more note here. So they're obviously not going to make any more sequels, but you know what would be cool? Okay, in Back to the Future 2, which you would know, Greg, if you had seen it.
Yes, sorry.
Marty travels 30 years into the future, and he sees what he and his parents and Biff and his henchmen, what they all look like 30 years older. Well, it's now been about 30 years since they filmed that movie, so now all of these actors are 30 years older. I think they should go back and refilm those scenes in front of green screen without any old age makeup on, just as they look right now, and then digitally replace those performances and release it into movie theaters as a special edition. And I know what you're going to say, that Michael J. Fox's Parkinson's kind of kills that idea, but I don't think so. I think you lean into it. Now older Marty McFly is dealing with Parkinson's on top of everything else. It kind of works with this story. You don't have to hide it.
And that would be really cool, actually.
So I'm throwing that idea out there. Zemeckis, Mr. Polar Express, I know you're a fan of this digital stuff. Your move, man.
Very cool.
So that brings us to the end of Back to the Future. Now we move on to Tim Burton's Batman.
Yeah, Tim Burton's Batman for me because like you were saying earlier in this episode, we were not junketeers, interviewers yet. As a movie fan, it was very important for me to watch this movie, not because I grew up as a comic book fan. I was a Marvel fan, okay, not a DC fan.
All right.
So I wasn't a huge Batman fan. I don't know, were you a huge Batman fan coming up to?
I was aware of it. I mean, I watched the Adam West TV series.
Okay.
I knew that, but I also knew that was kind of a silly version of it, that the comics were much more serious.
Maybe your entryway was maybe do you remember being a Michael Keaton fan before getting into, maybe from Night Shift?
I mean, there were Saturday morning cartoons of Super Friends and stuff. I mean, I knew it from all of that stuff.
Yeah, so...
But there was a lot of hype with this because it was the first superhero movie since Richard Donner's Superman that really had studio backing and a big budget and big stars and was really being taken seriously. And it had Jack Nicholson, which, he's a serious Oscar-winning actor. So everyone knew that this was likely to be good.
Right. But there were the huge gambles. The gamble, like you're saying, with Michael Keaton as a lead at playing the Cape Crusader. There's also the idea. I mean, obviously Donner's Superman paved the way over a decade earlier, but still there were questions whether.
But the series had gotten silly.
Right.
Superman 3, Superman 4, and
Quest for
5.
Peace,
They were just getting worse and worse and worse. And Hollywood never seems to blame the quality of a film on its business. They always say, oh, the trend is ending.
Right.
They'll kill traditionally drawn animation because they say, oh, audiences don't want that anymore, when in fact the movies just weren't that good. Make a good movie, people will come.
Yes.
But Hollywood never seems to get that. So Superman had kind of died out because it was making bad movies, but this sort of brought it back. And I think you can point to Tim Burton's Batman as a definitive step towards what has now become a complete superhero takeover of modern cinema.
Yeah. Yeah, and this was personally, this was an important movie for me because my favorite musician is Prince. And I remember as an 18-year-old wearing out my cassette copy of the Batman soundtrack. And then there were a lot of other singles and B-sides that were released surrounding this film. On a music level, it appealed to me. This is something that we're going to allude to regarding the first person up for our Batman segment.
We'll get to that, I think, after her interview.
Right.
I did want to tell a personal anecdote that I have for Batman, which was at the Village Theater in Westwood down in LA. They held the premiere and they made it available for people to come.
Right.
The public, the great unwashed. They put the word out in the LA Times that if you want to be at this premiere, stand in line, and if you're far enough to the front of the line, you can get in. You can come to this premiere. And so my friend Mark and I thought that sounded really cool, so we went down there 3 days early and camped out. And we went to the premiere.
Whoa.
And it was an experience. And we were on TV a lot because, news cameras kept coming up and talking to us. And we were very good at being silly and giving sound bites. So I remember I was on national news saying, we have no friends, we have no hobbies, we have no lives. One of my claim to fame.
Was it worth it, those several days? I don't know. How do you survive that?
Well, not by showering. It was an adventure, and we were young, and it was fun, and it was exciting, and we were in a theater with the stars of the movie, and that was before I interviewed them for a living, and it was great. Yeah.
Well, the first star up is, and we've heard her before, is Kim Basinger.
Right. She was part of our LA Confidential show. And if you haven't heard that yet, please go back and listen to it. It's really good. So, yeah, we don't really need to go into her credits, I think. We kind of did that already.
Let's just go right into the interview with Kim Basinger. We have more to say in the postscript. Take a listen to Kim.
Enjoy.
Because it was really so quick. It was on a Friday, and they asked me to be in London on a Sunday. And, I guess subconsciously somewhere I knew they were filming Batman, but I never thought that much about it, so I didn't really think that much about it, But instinctively, I think in 10 minutes I was on a plane in my head going away for 5 months. So it was a quick, it was a overnight, only had 2 nights to really, get everybody situated and pick up things from the cleaners and, all those kinds of things you have to do in your life.
Did it work?
Get ready to go
Fan
in.
growing up?
Actually, I grew up with the television series, but my family, my sisters and brothers actually loved the Batman comic books. The thing that I really loved as a kid, which was kind of strange, having been brought into this and schooled into this, I really loved bats as a kid. Literally having nothing to do with Batman.
I mean, most people are scared to death of bats. You like them?
Well, I loved bats as a kid, and all kinds of crazy little things, furry little things. So I loved bats. And the thing that really intrigued me about this whole thing, picture, I met him. And I had not met him. And I was really thrust into this. The Vicki Vale character had not really been developed that much. And I remember running up the stairs and going into his apartment, and there was Tim Burton sitting there with a skull shirt on. And I said, okay. I wanted to really sum up this whole situation here. And all of a sudden I looked over to the right and I went, the tables were covered in claws and they had little bones and bats and skulls. And I said, and just the way Tim looks, in general. And I just loved it. It was just electric for me. And I don't know, for some reason I just said, there's something about this. I'm really meant to be here. And we instantly, that was all there was. I just knew we flew on some plane together. And he said he loved bats. And I'd always loved bats. And I said, there is a reason I'm here. So from that time on, Tim and I actually had a you can call it sonar. No, you can't. There's not a word for it, but it's like a communication that was very just unspoken. You just don't get that very often. You don't find someone that's just, it's not common to have that kind of communication where you can just look across the room and know what someone's thinking. And that's the way we dealt with each other, director to actress.
Did you have any trepidations about having done My Stepmother as an Alien and then following it with Batman, that you might get typed into some fantasy film genre or something?
Not at all, because unfortunately, I really loved doing Stepmother. It was so much fun. I just had a ball with Benjamin and Dan and everyone, and that was fascinating to play that kind of, E.T., be able to play E.T. No, I wasn't, but unfortunately, not enough people saw it. So there's no problem. See, I don't weigh something from the next picture. I just don't do those kinds of things. It's just, pictures find me, and it's all instinctive, and it's all a reason for what things that we do in our lives and so forth and so on. And not to sound like Shirley MacLaine, but, there is, but, there are things that pull us in certain areas or whatever. So it's as plain as this. No one saw Stepmother, and it just came out in video, and I hear it's doing excellent. Hopefully people will see Stepmother.
Out of all your movies, what's your favorite one so far?
9.5.
How come?
I just love it. It was never seen. You guys really never saw the real film, but I love the impact it's had on people. I love it, and it was meant to do that. And it sort of laughed at all of us in the face, because it really has lived. It's lived. Even in Paris, it's been on the Champs-Élysées ever since it opened.
Wasn't there a tremendous strain? I mean, a strain may not be the right word, but that took a lot out of you to make that picture, didn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was actually, I think there's a time in everyone's life, an actor or an actress or an artist or whatever, when you can really come to a point, especially an actor and an actress. There are a lot of people out here, there are a lot of people in New York, there are a lot of people, dreamers who really just want to be stars. The difference in a star and an actress is a great deal of difference. I mean, really, I always equate it with there's this river, and you can come to the river's edge, and there's tons of little stars sitting over here, and you can make money, and you can jump in television, you can jump in film, you can stay right there forever, and really be popular and big and known and famous and everything else. But then if you really want to be an actress, I think you have to do it yourself. You really have to step over this emotional river. You really have to dive into it and do it. And I think 9.5 weeks took me 360 degrees emotionally. I mean, it was the highest I've ever been, and the lowest I've ever been in my life. And I'm not one of these actors or actresses at all that actually take the part home with them. I've never been. I've always said, hey, when they say Arapaho, I'm out of there. You know what I mean? And I'm me again. And that's one thing I love about Michael and Jack. They're very much that way. I mean, we laughed, we kidded, but when he was the Joker, when Michael was Batman, when I was Vicki, we just were, But 9.5 weeks, I have to admit, it dragged me. I was real depressed. A lot of times I'd really take it home with me a little bit because it was a true story. And we shot every single frame of that in sequence. I'll keep repeating that you guys have not seen that real story. There's a lot that they would not show, psychologically, so forth and so on. But we shot it in sequence, so I never saw Mickey at all, except the day, if you ever saw it, he walked into the little Chinese grocery store. From one day on, it was like a real relationship. So it's pretty hard to live like that, from day to day, emotionally.
You were playing opposite two really phenomenal male sex symbols, and was it difficult for you at all to have two men vying for your attention like these men, both on camera and possibly off camera?
No, we were more pals, off camera. I mean, this is really, really, it was like we built a tree house, and now what? So we all had to make a film, So it's like a club. It really was. I was the only girl in it, but, it was sort of a neat place to do. I wore bib jeans like everybody else, It's kind of neat. So, and I got to write my own character, and they got to develop their own characters, and everybody developed around each other. So it was really, we're all ingredients in this pie. As far as the fantasy was concerned, I got to be the spoiled, rotten little sister. You know what I'm saying? Spoiled, rotten little girl that could change everybody's heart or change everything. I was the light. And I was the one that had to ground these guys once they got to fantasy. I mean, I think Vicki Vale is the reality of the film. She snaps people back into reality, even after having been vacuumed up into this psychosis in which they all live, including her. I mean, you remember, she says, "Why you're here?" What's his name in the paper does? "I like bats." Well, there's something very strange about this cat because most people would scream, at the sight of a bat, but she doesn't. She actually likes them. And that's one thing I loved about her, that she likes bats. And from there, I really sort of built the part around that one thing, that she likes, she liked bats. So I could see that Vicki was the type of woman, girl, and so forth, that could be really swept up into this. And, instead of these two psychotic characters, you had three. I mean, I'd like to think that an audience sometimes might find themselves in one of these characters, But still, I had a responsibility, and in that being that I was the reality of the film, I had to bring it down to good and evil and Phantom of the Opera of the 80s type, without too much fantasy, the reality of love. Are you going to love me or not? Are you? Well, that's what most, normal people say, So normality was my path.
So she was really you. I mean, you both like bats, and you both had this.
Well, that was interesting. That was really kind of interesting. I like that. I like bats.
When did you find that the movie had, here in the States, really taken on a life of its own, and how did you react to that? I mean, just the hype and...
I don't think it's the movie. I think the movie became a part of the hype. Batman is Batman. He's been around a lot longer than any movie or tale or anything else. So we just, it's perfect timing. We just fit right in. And yes, the movie being made, of course, it just revved up. Everybody knocked on everybody's, pulled on everybody's, whatever, and got it all started again. But it's amazing. This isn't a film. It's an event. And it is an event. I mean, with all the pins, with all, you can't walk in any small town in America, any small town in Europe. I've been everywhere now. I've been around. And there's Batman everywhere. I mean, it's like Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
And bigger than Coca-Cola right now.
How much did you campaign for this part, and how much did you really want it?
I didn't want it, and I didn't campaign at all for it, and I don't do that. I don't do that. I've never done that. And I don't say that cocky or any way at all. It's just the way my life has gone. Pictures have found me. They've seeked me out. They've more or less they've had to draw me into them rather than me go after and search for something. I really don't live my life like God, if I don't get this, I'm going to die. I just don't live like that. I really don't. there's a reason I ended up doing Batman. We'll see what it is. Hopefully. No, I already see what it is, but Batman's a much bigger thing than just a movie for me.
I read in Rolling Stone that you said that the bat costume
Oh,
was...
God, I've heard this so much.
Yeah. Can you expound a little on that? I mean, for the radio listeners who might want to hear you explain how virile that costume is.
I think this costume, I really do. I think this costume has a lot to do with what all this glamour, what everything is about. I really do. If I hate to use the word brilliant. I don't do that. I don't like it, or genius in that. But if ever a drawing there was that was the most perfect, called hero, called magic, called anything you want to call it, that really from 2 to 92, I can find something in it. It's the Batman drawing, the wings, the ribs, the mask, not unveiling who it is, because we're all Bat people. We're all Batmen. We all hide something. I don't know what it is, but we all hide our side of our personality that it takes someone to get to know, or if we ever show it, So I equate that with a lot of power. I really do. And that, and just plain, little kids look up to it, and it's a hero. It's a hero, great looking outfit. I mean, hey, come Halloween, tell me they're not going to sell these in dime stores across America. And, and not only that, and then, you grow a little older and say, he's a cool dude. I really like this cat, whatever. And then you get a little older and say, he makes me giggle. He's sexy. It's a sexy outfit. Let's just, it's the truth. It's a very sexy looking thing. Now, in reality, when I rubbed up against it, it got all over every single thing that I wore. It's black and gooey, and I had it all over my face and my hair. By the time I got home, I looked like Tar Baby.
It's gooey?
So, that's the reality of the whole outfit.
Could you talk for a minute about the character of Vicki Vale? In a way, here she is, this very modern woman with a very strong photojournalism career and able to take care of herself. And then, in a sense, she ends up in a typical classic female in trouble type role with these super type men who can help her out or whatever.
But don't smart girls get in these? Don't smart journalists, all kind of people get in all kind of little things that they wish they hadn't got themselves into? And how in the hell did I do this? It's fun being a girl, isn't it? I mean, sometimes it's fun being vulnerable. I mean, it really is. And I think, you can look at it like one of those tied on the railroad track type roles, but it's not really. It's really, a lot of this we created ourselves, we wrote ourselves, we made up as we went along. I think there are some psychological statements about Vicki in here. I think there are times when you think she's psychotic. I think she plays a lot of things. I really do. I don't think she's always, she's in peril. But I think it was me that really pushed this more than any of the rest of the boys wanted to even put this in the movie. I think I wanted her in so much peril that it was sickening. I wanted her to over-paralyze herself, just perilous situation. I just wanted her to just be just like the dragging and dancing. I mean, Jack Nicholson thinks he's doing Arthur Murray. I think he's doing a ragdoll thing, I mean, it's wonderful. And then she turns the tide on him, and she uses sex. I love that scene. That's one of my absolute favorite scenes, when she sees Batman and all of a sudden, after having been pawed by the Joker through the whole movie, Vicki Vale, this pawing. Finally, she's just absolutely fed up and ready to say, okay, have me. Pull off my clothes here. Fierce, what this? And that's what she does. She turns the tide on the Joker. She turns around and starts kissing. He's like, oh, Mr. Joker. Oh. And I just love the look on Jack Nicholson. Obviously wonderful, because he didn't really know this was going to happen. It's just wonderful.
Any man who watches this movie would probably wish that he were in that role right then, having you pawing them. Did that occur to you at all?
No, but I know when I disappeared below frame. I mean, a lot of us could fit into these. It could have been anybody, any of us.
But I mean, compared to some of your other movies, there wasn't very much in the love scenes at all. Wouldn't it have been nice if Batman and Vicki could have gotten a little more together physically, or is that destroying the mythological legend?
Listen, I did everything but take off my clothes. And I told him, I said, look, let me tell you something. I said, we were in the middle of a scene one time, and I said, and they said, well, Nicholson and Michael were going at it, and they were saying, well, what's gonna happen in the scene to get us to stop this, whatever. And I said, I'm gonna get naked. I'm gonna get naked. And all of a sudden, so then they kept talking and everything. And they said, excuse me, well, what is she going to do? And I said, I'm going to get naked. And so Jack Nicholson said, that's fine with me. And then Michael was saying, no, what are you talking about here? I mean, at first he thought we were kidding, and then he knew we were serious. He said, no, what? I play Batman. We got to do this. Kids and everything. Nicholson said, I think it's a great idea. He said, what could stop a fight any quicker than that? So it was funny. It was for a second. So instead of, hey, we all compromised and I ate popcorn. Now this is another, to go back to your question about this perilous situation. See, I got her to do freaky things too. It's just like watching this whole thing happen between two little boys in a living room and me eating popcorn. Just like the audience is going to be doing. They're going to eat popcorn and they're going to watch this whole thing. They're going to drink Cokes and they're going to eat, paydays, and they're going to sit there and they're going to do this. That's exactly what I wanted a popcorn bowl for, the whole time, just to watch, see how silly they were. So rather than take off my clothes, I chose to eat popcorn out of a glass bowl.
Were you envious you didn't get one of these cool costumes to wear like the other two?
I thank God every morning. You ought to see the 2 hour and a half or whatever it was, Jack Nicholson. Oh, I had to go through every morning for that. And then Michael, no wonder he was so worn out by 12 at noon. I mean, it was unbelievable because that thing was heavy for number one, very hot. Black stuff all over his face, and plus had to lift me up all the time.
Can I go back to something Mary said about any man in the world seeing you? You're so pretty, and you're just probably one of the top 5 most beautiful women making movies. Are you comfortable with that role at all? Uncomfortable with it?
I don't see it as that. I never have. I feel. To each his own, whatever they want to think about you. If they think, you're going to have some fans that some people think you're sexy, some people don't. It's to each his own. Everybody's different in what their idea of whatever is. But me personally, the person, I told this group of people a little while ago, I said, I get up just like you guys do. I mean, women have their time of the month. They do this, they do that, whatever you want to call it, whatever. And we all have our good days, our bad days. We look in the mirror and say, I look like hell today, man. Let's just face it. Or some days, hey, I look hot today. My hair's going right. Wow. Lips, everything's good. There are no zits on your face. You look pretty good. You really do. You look hot. Try to wear this, You know what I mean? You fit into your jeans. It's great. It's a great day.
On a related topic, about your image, has it been difficult for you to overcome the image of the model turned actress? A lot of models who become actresses are never taken seriously. But you've done a lot of movies in the last few years. Do you feel like you're being taken seriously as an actress?
Yeah, and I don't worry about that either. If you just spend your whole time worrying about all this, then there's no time for anything else, And I am a creator. I'm a writer, number one. I really am. I'm a writer, and I was a singer first, way before all this stuff. I love it between action and cut. I love being an actress because I love making movies. I love making movies for people. People find that amazing because people don't really like to make movies for people anymore. They like to make them for themselves. Hopefully they'll make money, but they don't. But I'm kind of a people movie person, I am, and I'm lost. What did you ask me?
Well, really, do you feel that you've been taken seriously?
Yeah, I just don't worry about that. I feel like I'm gathering a body of work. You can see, some people I make laugh, other people I can make cry. I love comedy. I do that. I love what I do. I know there's so much I have to do. In a very short time here, I'm going to release, just do some music, And a lot of people say, oh, God, another actress is going to do an album. Shit, this is sickening. That's not the case here. I started in music. I come from a music family. I played the piano and the guitar all my life.
I think,
talk about this
country,
music.
What type of music?
Excuse me?
What type of music?
Just rock music, actually. Just rock music. But I've been writing for years, and, we'll see. I don't know how to classify music anymore. How do you do it?
Did you sign a contract and everything? You're actually making an album?
Well, I'm actually going to. Maybe this week.
When's it coming out?
I don't know.
Who's arranging and producing it?
I'm not telling.
It's all original.
I have answers for everybody. Whoa, anything else?
It's original compositions?
Yeah, a lot of them are.
Will you go on the road?
I don't know. I'm really shy in front of an audience. I'm terrified, and that's why I hadn't done it before, I don't think. I think it's all been timing, too, because I've been jumping from one film to another. But I think I'm terror-stricken in front of audiences. So now that it's the age of video, and I love, and, I've written everything, all the videos out, everything. So it's safe for me. It's okay. But I don't think you can really do great unless you do that. So I'm going to have to face it and do it.
Accompany yourself?
No. I wouldn't play for any of you. I wouldn't play for my next one. I wouldn't play for anybody. I just write on the piano, the guitar all the time.
Would you play on this album? The instruments on the album?
I leave that to them. No, I'll help arrange everything and everything. Yeah, definitely.
Are we talking by the end of the year, maybe? By
I don't know. I can't give you a date, hopefully.
Did I read somewhere that you recently bought an entire town in Georgia? Can you just explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's actually a story in the making. I can't talk about that either until August. I can't. I mean, I'm really under oath here, but I can't talk about that. That really is quite a story.
Can you talk a little more about the improv and making stuff up? It sounds like, when you and Jack and Michael got together, some of the script pages got thrown out the window scene by scene.
Well, I can't say the idea of Batman as a skeleton, because it's what it is. It's a legend and it's there. But when whoever did this from John Peters and Peter Guber and when they came up with this idea 10 years ago of doing Batman, then it developed a little skeleton script, whatever. As these characters, as Jack Nicholson rolled into it and Michael Keaton rolled into it as Batman, and then later, very later, I really emerged as Vicki Vale. This is not a story that could be written without all of these characters seeing where they were going to mesh together. So we found ourselves writing on the weekends. I'd write with Tim. I'd write with Michael. I wrote a lot. Well, a lot of the people wrote. And we all got together in rooms. Fascinating things would happen. We tried fascinating things that we would probably have to get another rating if we, no. But there were greater things and lesser things. Funny things, a lot of leftover things that can be used again. But some of it was magical. It really was, because Michael and Jack they're so good at what
You're
they
going to
do.
do the sequel?
I don't know. Up and down the hall, they keep coming up with Batman 2 and ideas and Catwoman flying around. And would you do it?
Dick Tracy as well?
Excuse me?
Aren't you appearing in Dick Tracy?
No, everybody else in town is.
What else are you working on?
No, I'm working on several projects that I'll probably start to film very soon here. I could get a phone call right now.
Was there anything in Batman that scared you, like stunts when he was pulling you around and doing all sorts of stuff? Did you get scared at all?
I love the stunt work.
It's fun?
Yeah. I was a gymnast for years, so I love stunt work. I love it. But you're not stupid. I mean, I'm not stupid to the point to say, hey, you gotta let the stunt girl do this. I can't hack it, because it could put me out for a long time. But we had little accidents, like when Nicholson was standing up on that and all that debris started falling. Those bricks actually were rocks. The two of them fell on my head, and I had we called it a corn cushion at the time. But it was over the afternoon I got okay after passing out a couple of times.
Kim, you said you watched the television series. Tell me about what you remember from that and what makes Batman more exciting now in this film versus the old Batman.
Well, I thought they were gutsy then because it was so corny that I just said, you can't really do this out loud in front of people, can you? I mean, really. So I just thought it was as gutsy as in the 60s when they had that day-glow orange and green. It was just, and now it's just so, Steven Sprouse kind of whatever. I don't know. I just thought it was gutsy. And I think that people just loved it. Wang, bang, wow, all this pow. I just loved it. I just thought it was, as a comic strip come alive. It's just great. It was gutsy.
Well, this film is very much darker than the TV series. What would you tell people what to expect or not to expect, or where they should put their focus or attention when they go and see this movie?
I hope this is true. I consider all Batman fans, especially the ones I have met, because I have met, I'd say, I wouldn't say thousands, but more than 1,000, 2,000. I love this group of people. Maybe it's just because I haven't seen other obsessive people like the Star Trek, the Trekkies, whatever. But they're open-minded, these Batman people. And I think they're ready. They love change. They love whatever they love. And they're freaks, and I just love them. I mean, I consider myself a Batman freak now. I don't know what, and I hope they go in with the mindset I think they have, is just open and clear-minded, open-minded to accept what they're about to see, because this is a real film. It's a psychological study, and it's a real film with real people. It's grounded every once in a while in reality, then it pops back up in the fantasy. So, but it's not comic book. It's not. And doesn't have little letters going, wow, pow. Those happen, but it's all with sound effects and stuff. So I don't want them to expect the cartoon. I want them to expect much more of a magical experience. You know, it's a real ride.
You mentioned the Phantom of the Opera, and you mentioned Batman and all this wonderful, fantasy. And if you had to be carried off by somebody, who would it be?
I wouldn't mind Batman. I love that outfit. I told you guys that already. Yeah, Batman. Batman wouldn't be bad.
Does 14 films in 8 years seem like a lot?
It's a lot. It's quick.
Are you going to slow down?
Nope.
Are you going to move to Brazil?
Not right this second. Got a lot to do this week.
In August?
Yeah, nope. Not yet. No, I can't.
Rightly or wrongly, you've been quoted a few times as saying you're going to have it all. Do you still feel that way?
It's not you're gonna have it all. If you want it all, you can get it. Whatever your all is, whatever everybody's all is different. I think it sounds corny, but I think what you go after, what you really want, you better watch what you ask for because you can get it. It's that simple. It's believe in belief.
You talked about yourself in terms of your music. I just want to jump back to that just a second. Unfortunately, in the music business, they always say, well, it sounds like this and it sounds like this. If you had to categorize what you're going to sound like or what you do sound like, just so that I could get a taste of it, could you do that? Is that possible?
I hate to do that because I could mention names and, it wouldn't make any sense. It really wouldn't. I grew up on soul music. I'm from the South. And I grew up on soul music all my life. Black music I absolutely love. So a lot of that is in me, but the Beatles are also in me, and the sweet ballads of Joni Mitchell and a lot of things. So, I was first a lyricist. Have always been. And then, music just came out of me a lot. My father's been a writer for years. He was in the big band era. He played in the big bands, so we're musical people. But, maybe it's, I don't know, Joni Mitchell gone black. I don't know what it is. I really don't know. It's just, I really don't know how to categorize.
Will it take more guts to perform musically than it has to become an actress and act?
I think I've done that to myself. My fear factor has built it up to the point that it's made it something it isn't. Do you know what I mean? It'll be difficult because I'm very, very comfortable. Not that I'm fearless. I mean, in that way, I love taking chances and I love being scared to death. But I also know that my crew is my family, so I can fall and get back up, and it's not a one-time performance. On the other hand, it's scary to me, but I've blown it out of proportion.
If there's a Batman 2, where would you like Vicki Vale to be? Where do we pick up with her?
I don't know. I've heard she's going to be in for a real tumble with Catwoman. So that's exciting. I don't know. There are all kind of ideas really around.
Being a fan of music, particularly black music, soul music, how does it feel to be the inspiration of a pair of Prince songs? He has the one song, Vicki Waiting, and then he has, in Bat Dance, he's talking about, I want to bust that body. How do you feel about that?
I have gotten to know Prince, through Batman, and I really, really admire him. I like him a lot. It's a very special thing.
What was it like when you met him?
Ladies and gentlemen, that's the end. Thank you.
Okay, so that was Kim Basinger. In her interview, Kim mentioned that she was getting ready to record a music album, and she did. And remember, she was asked who's arranging and producing it, and she answered, I'm not telling. But then right at the end, she said that she'd gotten to know Prince really well and that they had a very special relationship. So could these two statements be related? Greg, why didn't you tell us?
Well, she was romantically linked to Prince, and I had no idea. I thought I was a really huge Prince fan, and thanks to Matt, when she alludes to this album, I thought she was actually, during the interview, I thought she was actually talking about a CD release. It was called a maxi single, which was an extra couple of tracks off of the soundtrack. There was a release called The Scandalous Sex Suite, which Prince released back in the day. And it had Kim Basinger in the background talking and moaning as Vicki Vale in the CD. And so when she mentions that music album, I was thinking, what music album are you talking about? It was just a Scandalous Sex Suite, and that was just a CD with a couple of tracks. You weren't singing whatsoever, but then thanks to you, Matt, I did some research online and I found it. It was an album called Hollywood Affair, which actually never got released. Yeah, and you can actually listen to it on popdose.com or even Google it on YouTube. Just type of Kim Basinger Prince.
I can actually be a little more specific than that. Run a Google search on the phrase Rob Smith can't say no to Kim Basinger, and it'll take you right to it.
Oh, okay. Very, very good.
And you can hear the whole album, and you can read all about it. But Greg, what do you want to tell us about this album?
It has. Here's the thing. Prince has a thing with female proteges. You were going to say?
Oh, I'm just going to point out that he wrote every song on this album and he produced it.
Okay, cool. So, like a lot of his proteges, Martika, Sheena Easton, by the way, contributed a track called "The Arms of Orion." It was a duet with Prince, actually on the Batman soundtrack. I think Kim Basinger was going to be the latest in line of just female singers that he groomed to and fit to his musical aesthetic
and slept with along the way.
As he groomed to his music aesthetic. We're going to cut that out. I'm just kidding. I love Prince. Rest in peace. But if you listen to this album, it has the signature Prince poppy sound. I've listened to a couple of the tracks via that link, and even though Basinger's voice isn't prominent, and there's a good reason why she did not come out with another album, or her voice is not distinct. The music of Prince, actually, in the background, you can hear it's of that time. He was a guy who always loved creating new sounds, and I'm glad that album was not released. It would have been a forgettable album. The actual album itself is out there on YouTube or via that link, and you can.
It exists. They did record it. It didn't come out because it wasn't very good, apparently. But yeah, you can find it. You can listen to it. Enjoy.
Yeah, enjoy. What is it called? Hollywood Affair, Kim Basinger and Prince. But more importantly, enjoy the Batman soundtrack. It's one of my all-time favorite Prince albums, along with the scandalous Sex Suite. Even though there was Kim Basinger moaning, it's actually a good maxi single. They don't even call it maxi single. Hopefully, it's available right now on Spotify or Apple Music. So.
Okay. Well, I have a few postscripts that I would like to give.
Cool.
Now, Kim Basinger said that she was terror-stricken in front of audiences, and I can verify that. Because I worked as an extra for 2 or 3 weeks on a movie called The Marrying Man, which was actually Basinger's very next film in 1991. One of the scenes that I was in was a club scene where she sang a song. And even though she was lip-syncing to a recording, we were told that she was really nervous about it. So it was a closed set. I mean, they basically treated it like a sex scene, except, with lots of extras. You were only allowed in the room if you had to be. And I remember that they rehearsed one shot where the camera was on a dolly and there was a stand-in up on stage where Kim was going to stand. She was back in her trailer at the time. They worked out exactly what the camera was going to see. And then they came up to my table and they told me, the camera doesn't see you, so please leave the set and go back to the holding area. But they said to the guy sitting at the table with me, right at the end of the camera dolly move, we can see the very edge of your knee, so you stay. And that's how precise they were. And it was all because Kim Basinger wanted as few people in the room as possible because she was so nervous about pretending to sing to this pre-recorded track.
Wow. Did you ever end up watching that movie, The Marrying Man?
I did. I read the script when I was on set, and I thought it was really funny. It was written by Neil Simon.
Neil Simon, yeah. I was thinking about that, yeah.
Yeah, it was written by Neil Simon, but so many stories came out afterwards, and I actually witnessed some of it. I witnessed Alec Baldwin screaming at the producer in front of the whole crew. I mean, there was a lot of drama. I understand that they dropped a lot of dialogue and just kind of made up their own lines. So when the movie came out, it was kind of a mess, and it was not the script that I had read.
And also during the interview, she referred to, someone asked her about a town that she's going to buy or thoughts about that. That was a reference to Brazelton, Georgia, which she purchased, and I was reading reports that actually she lost a lot of money on buying her own town in Georgia. So that was referenced obliquely in the interview, but that's what happened regarding Basinger.
Okay.
During that era.
I did find it interesting that she talked about how she and Tim Burton and some of the other actors got together and worked on the script. None of them are credited screenwriters, but that doesn't mean she wasn't telling the truth. I mean, a lot of times that just comes down to union rules. So, maybe so. It'd be kind of interesting to know what the actors brought to it. The other thing, they asked her if she was going to be in the sequel, and she said that she didn't know. Obviously, she wasn't, as we now know, fans of the Batman series. 1992's Batman Returns has a different love interest for Batman. It's Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman. According to IMDb, Vicki Vale was actually in screenwriter Sam Hamm's early draft of the film, But because Tim Burton doesn't like making sequels, they dropped her in order to make the second one as different from the first as possible.
Wow. Cool.
So, oh well.
Oh well. Well, now we're done with Kim Basinger. We're now on to Michael Keaton and Tim Burton.
That is true, and cinephiles probably already know this, but it's worth pointing out Michael Keaton and Tim Burton had previously worked together on Beetlejuice.
Beetlejuice.
There was quite a bit of controversy when Keaton was cast because comic book fans thought that he was a terrible choice, and they said so quite loudly, as comic book fans so often do.
That's a point that is addressed in the interview at length, which is cool.
It is, and you do have to remember this was before the internet, so their screams had to be pretty deafening to have made national news. So you are going to hear Michael Keaton's reaction to all of that. I wanted to point out that Michael Keaton and Tim Burton came in together and they're sitting right next to each other, but Burton doesn't say a word for the entire first half.
Right.
And because this is audio only, you sort of forget that he's there because, for 15 minutes, it's a Michael Keaton interview.
I was surprised when I heard Burton. I go, what the heck?
Yeah. Suddenly somebody asks him a question and it's like, oh yeah, Tim Burton's here too, huh? You are going to hear a couple of references to when producer John Peters was here a minute ago. He said, don't be confused. He was a part of this junket, and we do have that tape, but we left him out because basically it was a choice between including him on this episode or doing Back to the Future 2. So, sorry, John. And that's all I have.
Cool.
Got anything, Greg?
Got nothing. Michael Keaton and Tim Burton. We have some more stuff probably in the postscript.
We do.
Yeah, the filmmakers.
So we'll talk to you guys then. Enjoy.
Yes, till then, enjoy.
Future sequels scare you still? I know that was a concern of yours when you first were deciding to take the
It wasn't that much of a concern because I didn't make any plan on... I had no plan to do anything past the first one, so it didn't scare me. The only thing that I would have had to consider is that I said, when you do this, you have to commit to 3. And that would have... I would have had to really sit down and think that over. And I wouldn't have done it, but no, the idea of doing another one is a possibility, but doing 3, I don't know, anything's possible.
Come on, 5.
Or I'll do 6 or 7.
Is it true that you were reluctant in the beginning to take it and that Tim had to twist your arm, or is that another dirty industry rumor that's circulating?
Given that it's a dirty industry, no. No, he didn't have to twist my arm. What he did, I think he pinned me to the pavement, I think, and hurt me. No, he told me about the movie he was doing. Then he sent the script over and asked if I wanted to do it. I took the script and I said, I'm interested, but I don't think you'll see it the way I see the character, the way I see the character. And if you don't, you have to tell me that, and we'll save each other a lot of time. And I explained how I saw the character, and he agreed with me, and then gave me even more information, and I saw he had a real clear vision of this movie, and I had wanted to work with him again anyway. And there wasn't much arm twisting. It was just, it's a tricky, it's not a clear and obvious choice to make. So I like to make those choices when it's a little risky. I like to make it. I like, better to opt on the side of, to err on the side of action, I think,
So how did you see the character?
Essentially depressed and dark and, what else did I see him? How else did I see him? Dark and depressed and angry and a man with a lot on his agenda, to say the least, and actually sleepy. I saw him as a man who probably was tired during the day, given what he did at night, and interesting, really, really interesting, and also funny, humorous, almost in spite of himself. And I just like and then Tim had some ideas that had a lot of ideas. A lot more than I did, actually, at that point. And I seemed to like all of those. So.
How did you feel about the protests against you when you were chosen to play the role, and a lot of the fans of the Batman comics said...
You mean my jaw?
Yeah,
well, I talked to Jay Leno about it, and he and I decided... I said, Jay? No, he's my friend. He doesn't mind if I say that. I got lucky because I didn't have a frame of reference from which to work, because I essentially I knew a little bit about Batman. I knew who Batman was. I knew there was this comic book figure and all that. But I didn't. All I was doing was taking the script and making a decision about what character I read in the script. And then I got lucky because we went to shoot in England, so I missed a good bit of that. They don't. They don't allow Americans to receive news over there. No, it's not true at all. We missed a lot of it, or we'd get, as Tim says, we'd get it 9 hours later. We get the information 9 hours later, and something's lost in the translation. Plus, we were just too busy working. So, fortunately, I missed a lot of it. We both were lucky in that respect, that we missed a lot of all the stuff that I guess was going on. Then, when I finally came back after doing the movie, it came on like a rush. So I found it fascinating. Actually, I still am amazed by it. I don't quite get it. I just didn't know there was any kind of, outside of, Shiite Muslims, I didn't know there was anything this fanatical around, you know what I mean? So, and then that went from amazement to, I think it's just funny. I just think it's funny. What are we talking about here? We're talking about a movie. We're talking about a man who's not real. Grow up is what I'm saying. That's basically what I'm saying. And also, I felt fine because I knew the movie that we made, and I feel real sure that it's just a good movie. It'll stand on its own.
How different was it playing this role than any other role you've ever played?
It was very different in that I had to learn how to act in a movie like this. And a movie like this was a movie with huge scope. It was a large movie. I had never been in a movie with this many effects and this spectacular. It's a spectacular thing, really. And movies like Star Wars and those pictures of that ilk, I guess. I had never done a movie like that, so it was tough for me to learn how to act in a movie like that, and also the wardrobe. Not just the physical moving around with wardrobe like that, but, it's a look. You know what I'm saying? You can say that a couple different ways. It's a look. You've got to learn how to, be believable and look like that, and then have a full, well-rounded character and still dress like that. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of quick adjusting to do for me. And so it was really learning how to, I describe it as, working, how to be a cog in that machine. I never worked with in an engine that big. And I just had to place myself, and Tim had a real strong view of this, always. He had a good, I think, vision. Not to say that we didn't adjust and change as we went along, but he had a real clear vision. So it was kind of being... subjecting myself to a palette. Do you know what I mean? And letting Tim kind of, and being painted into it, which I was willing to do. I had my criteria, which I took care of. But after that, I pretty much subjected myself.
Was the bat suit hot?
Bat suit was hot.
At one point, I know that you looked at Jack Nicholson and said, we're grown men. You must have been thinking, look at us.
Well, yeah, I stepped out and I just saw us two standing there, the way we looked. I just said, Jack, we're grown men and we're doing this or something, and we both had a laugh, and I think about take 16 later, after giggling a little bit, we finally got on with it. Sometimes it was just plain funny to me. It's just, I'm sorry, it just was. That's not to demean it. It was just plain funny. It is. Tim and I would have many laughs. We still have laughs about when we're doing, the career's over and we're,
the shopping mall
circuit. Tim and I are out, and I go about 460, and I'm opening up malls, as the old Batman, and Batman 12.
How long did it take you to put that outfit on?
I got that down pretty much. That after a while I got down.
How many pieces were there and stuff?
There were. Oh, it's a good question. There's the main thing. There's this. There's that. 2, 3. 4. We counting both shoes or just one shoe and one thing?
I didn't call shoes.
Okay, shoes. That's one. There was the main thing. Then I had to be. There were bolts, Velcro. I'll give you the materials, then you can figure out the rest. Metal bolts, a metal plate, Velcro, rubber, latex, leather, geez, it kind of sounds like the itinerary at the pleasure chest, doesn't it?
Coming from your background of not being a Batman fanatic, what do you think it is about Batman that for a few generations now he's really popular?
Haven't a clue. It's a pretty cool. The thing about it is, now that I know a little bit more about Batman, especially this Batman, he's intelligent. He's pretty cool. I mean, it comes down to he's just pretty cool, actually. And what I like about is our interpretation. I'll say our interpretation is he's very intelligent. You know, he knows he has no superpowers, and. After that, I don't know why people are going so nuts.
Are you worried at all that your Batman persona may overshadow anything that you do later in your career?
No.
When you consider the two big controversies of this year are probably Salman Rushdie and your portrayal of Batman, what would you like for people to keep in mind when they come and see this film?
Don't send guys out to shoot me. That's one. If you're going to compare me to Salman Rushdie, I don't know. I'm sorry to say I haven't thought about it that much. Honestly, it was the next movie, the next role. That's all. I did the job, and now I'm done. And I thought it was a pretty nice job. And
you didn't feel any extra responsibility because people were saying, "Why Michael Keaton?" or comic. Really?
Not
Didn't
for a
bother you a
second.
bit?
Responsibility?
Well, or is there a risk here? People are
risk? Oh,
laying
sure.
For me.
Yeah. Once I started hearing what was going on, then you go, geez, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Hey, I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. No, I thought to myself, well, there's clearly a challenge here, but that only served service to me. That served me, whatever the expression is.
Was there any danger about
prostitution? I'm not sure.
You were running around in this heavy costume, these metal plates, and all this stuff, and you had to fall down from wires. And so, were you worried at any time about physical danger?
You know what I don't like? I didn't know this because I would get angry at him. I actually like stunts. What I don't, certain aspects, certain stunts I don't like. I hate being around flammable things. That's not one of my favorite things, and I'm not nuts about wires and things like that. And given the kind of movie it was, there's like no escape from that. You pretty much have to do that. And actually, he made those things pretty. He made it as easy as he possibly could. I think I've only suffered second-degree burns.
I
didn't.
Close calls?
Yeah. Yeah, and the physical part of come on, going up on a cable and jumping over thing and beating up bad guys. I mean, that's fun. That's just plain fun.
You usually get top billing in a movie ever since Night Shift, I suppose. And I wonder how you feel about, for the first time, not getting top billing.
Well, this is interesting because somebody asked me that the other day, and I honestly said, I thought I did. I mean, I truly thought I did. I saw both names there, and they looked to be the same size, and they were on the same across the top. I thought that that was top billing. I guess I don't because Jack's name comes first. So
you're bitter about it.
I'm pissed off about it. There you go. No. Let's say if it was, I don't know, if it was whose name? If it was, if it was another name. I might feel a little upset about it, but if it's Jack Nicholson,
Suzanne Summers.
Okay. No, her actually, I'd understand.
In the movie Taxi Driver, they have that wonderful scene where Robert De Niro is like in front of the mirror and putting on the hat and doing the whole thing. Could you describe what it was like the first time you put on the cape and had the whole thing on, and did you go through this hey, I'm Batman,
No, I was kind of privately doing that at home.
Take us to that place.
Well, it's a place I like to call Nirvana, really. No, it's no. I mean, once you get anytime I do a role, and probably any actor will tell you this, when you get the wardrobe on, man, a whole other thing starts to happen, and that's I really think where it starts to happen. And in this case, it was just bigger and badder than anything I had ever seen before, and so sure it had an effect, and you feel extremely powerful in it, but not much more than just adjusting to the look.
Anything like this you fantasized about when you were a little kid, tying a napkin on your neck and jumping off the bed or something?
No, I do remember roughly. just thinking I could take some sort of blanket or something and jumping out of a tree and actually thinking the thing would open like a chute. I was not necessarily a bright child. I think I broke both ankles on that one. No, I never did.
Robert Wall was telling us about the conversations that he had with Jack Nicholson where they would talk about sports and all this other stuff.
Mhm.
Were you in on that or part of that? And did you?
No, I was pretty much excluded from everything. They pushed me around. You know, in school you find a kid like to push around and beat up. That's what they would do to me, right, Tim?
That's
Even
right.
Tim joined in on the fun.
That's it.
No,
Make fun of
very much. That's the great. Somebody asked me what's great about working with Jack, and one of the great things is learning from him as an actor. The second great thing is you're never out of touch with how the Lakers are doing, or any sports activities for that matter, because this guy would come in with truly, literally, dart results. You know, we were shooting in England, and he'd tell us about the dart match the night before. Wool and I would go crazy. He was actually sitting home watching darts sometimes. I mean, I was going nuts. That's a man who loves his sports. No, that was a lot of fun. That was one of the more fun things, getting the Laker tapes over.
Because he
I
was
got a
telling
question
us.
for Tim. I wanted to ask you what.
Certainly about time. Can I say that?
I'd like to answer in sign language.
What initially drew you to the Batman project, and what drew you to Michael Keaton for the title role?
What drew me to the project was the image of Batman. I wasn't a giant comic book fan, but I loved. If I did have a favorite comic, it was Batman, because I liked the images, I liked what it was about, the characters, and then I also liked the idea of the new comics. Even though I specifically, not being educated in comics, I didn't fully understand them. Although I liked what they did towards the conventions of opening things up for comics, which I think helped the movie a lot. And it's basically just the primal image of a man dressing up as a bat and a sort of a guy turned into a clown. Very great images. And we just, with Michael, what we wanted to do was address the psychology of a character like this, but we could only do it on a shorthand kind of a way. You spend 8 movies discussing a split personality and still not arrive at anything. And with Michael, you just get, I just said I could see Michael putting on a bat suit, and you do get a lot of things with that. You get a very.
You thought, if I can see it, I can film it.
That's right. I could see him putting on a bat suit. And so, again, it just seemed like a much more interesting way to go for me. I had trouble finding any weight in the fact that a guy is so handsome and so square-jawed and so rich. I mean, what the hell does he need to put on a batsuit for? And again, with Michael, I don't know, it seems to make a lot of sense.
Do you think if you hadn't worked with him just recently on Beetlejuice, you would have even considered him for the role?
That's hard to say. I mean, because you always bring in, I did enjoy working with him a lot on Beetlejuice, and there's a real spark there. So it might have a little bit, it might have influenced it a little bit, but that's kind of hard to say because I'd seen Clean and Sober, and I thought it was brilliant, and I thought he was great, and so I mean, I had seen other things which I really liked.
Go ahead, just talk amongst yourselves.
Can you talk about what it is about him that was right for this?
Well, again, in translating a comic book to 3-dimension live-action movie, you want to give it some psychological. Here, you want me to get that for you?
You can't have a Perrier bottle.
Boy, that working out paid off. You try to bring a certain psychological reality to something where you can't spend a lot of time in the psychology, and the idea that it is a human being, that he does change, it made sense because, again, the idea of Michael becoming this sort of strong figure, there is a change with that. I'm not saying you're a wimp, but no, but there's a difference. There's a difference between and rather than having a square-jawed guy in an Armani suit and then a square-jawed guy in a bat suit, I just didn't find, just didn't think that was interesting. Plus, Michael's a very good actor, and he just, again, he's able to bring a lot just by the subtlety that he brings and the look. And I mean, there's not many people that have something, you look at their eyes and you just see so much going on. And I just, very, very important to this.
Do you see this?
Pardon me, Michael. Do you see some kind of split personality there or something?
Well, sure. I mean, anybody who puts on a bat suit and then, I mean, it's somebody who is not quite together. And, I mean, I think
Did you see it in Michael?
Oh, sure. And I've been meaning to talk to you about it. I've been talking to your
What was it like
analyst.
working with Kim?
Big jump there. And we didn't even get into my split personality. I was kind of curious about that.
Excuse me, you can forget
No,
about
it was news to me, and I'm a little upset by it. I'm thrown for a second. No, it was great. She's great to work with. She's fun. I mean, talking about a lot of ideas. There's a girl with a lot of ideas, and tremendous instincts as an actress. I mean, just really, she's just got these great instincts. Plus, she's a lot of fun. A lot of laughs.
What about the hip factor of this character and of both of you being part of this film? I mean, Batman is like the only hip superhero, really.
Yeah, I'll say.
He's like really cool. He's real cool, and kids seem to be really reacting.
I think because he's a real guy, and again, it's just a real guy, and bats are great. Everybody loves bats in some form or another.
Adam West reports that he never got into the bat suit. I don't know whether it's true or not, but he said it recently. Never got into the bat suit and did the Batman part. Had it ever occurred to you that anybody could be Batman behind that?
No.
Who would know the difference?
Well, I think if you're trying, as we were trying, again, there's so many pitfalls that you can fall into on a movie based on a comic book because it's right across the board. It's broad. So it was always our goal to give it as much as we possibly could, given all of the elements. And so I think you can never just say it doesn't matter because we just tried very hard to make it matter as much as possible. And I do think that there is a difference for me anyway.
How much did both of you study the comic books, actually, since you weren't really a Batman fan, you said? I mean, to know what your character is supposed to be like, how much time did you spend checking them out?
Well, almost none.
I mean, I'll say this: the script was written by a guy, Sam Hamm, who is a real comic book fan. He's somebody that's a real comic book fan, but is also very smart and can step outside it a bit. So, I think for me, I was very lucky to be working with somebody like that, who I knew would be true, really true. Probably, I would say I feel very true to the spirit of it, but Sam, in terms of the script, was much more true in terms of the actual specifics of it. So we had a very good groundwork, I think.
So you didn't even really need to because it was all there for you.
Is that an advantage or disadvantage, do you think, not really seeing the TV show? Or
Clearly an advantage. Here's how it worked. I got a script. I didn't even think about what I did was I got a script and I read it and I decided whether or not I found this character an interesting one to play. I clearly found him interesting. Then the next thing is you say, okay, now this is the man who puts on a suit, a bat suit, and then becomes Batman. So I worked from that. It was real simple. It's not complicated and maybe not even that interesting. I found it, however, an advantage not to have any real frame of reference. So because then I could create my own character, and I trusted that my instincts and my by following the script, by following what Sam Hamm had written down. So I just trust my own instincts that if I went in with a real strong base and listened to what Tim's instructions were. I mean, it sounds pretty formal, but Tim had a real clear view of the character. He'd been with the script a long time. I had just come off another movie and kind of hit the road running, and so I had to work fast. But clearly, for me, an advantage, and also no interest in knowing that. I wanted to work from this character, the character that I was reading there.
Tim, talk about working the Prince stuff in.
Well, it's just, anytime I work on something, I listen to things that affect me, both that inspire me, and it can be used directly or indirectly. You just listen to things that inspire you in different ways. And I had seen his show and just thought it was, I rarely see something that I think is really amazing, and I thought his show was one of the best things I'd ever seen. So I was into it, and listening to stuff that, again, indirectly maybe applies to what we were doing. And then there was a couple of instances where we used actual playback of his stuff in certain key sequences, and so and then just I think it was somebody found out he was interested, and it was great. I mean, I rarely meet people that I really think are real individuals.
Tim, do you feel that your animation background helped you a great deal in directing this film? Do you think you could have done it as well without having had that experience at Disney?
I appreciate my background as an animator because mostly because I didn't have to go to film school. In a strange way, it's much more of what I would consider a solid film school background, because in animation you end up, you draw the backgrounds, you end up lighting it, you end up doing voices, you end up learning a lot more about just basic normal filmmaking. So I do appreciate that aspect of it, and it teaches you to open up a bit more in terms of when you apply it to a live action thing. So yeah, I'm very happy about that.
Which scene took the longest to shoot?
Which scene?
Which scene was the most difficult? No, do it again.
I don't remember.
They all remember. It just seems like the one where you're on the wire hanging over the fire, probably. Huh?
Yeah, that's right.
Does any scene stand out in your memory for any reason?
We're really trying to forget.
No, not really. I mean, I'm sure if we sat here and if we weren't on radio and we could sit around for a while, I'd come up with something. But right now, no, it just all seemed like more of a difficult shoot than most because of the size of the movie.
Jack Nicholson's part expanded, and I mean, John said he was booked originally for 3 or 4 weeks, and time went on. I mean, and you were compared to him, ironically, in your performance in Clean and Sober, justifiably or not. There doesn't seem to have been any sense of competition or any sense that it would become Jack's movie rather than your movie. You two seem to get along great together. Is that a fair...
No, we hate each other and we were very competitive. No, I'm sorry. No, yeah, that going in, as soon as I met Jack and went over and talked about the movie with him, I sensed there sure wasn't going to be any problem I sure didn't think there would be any problem like that. And as soon as we started working together, there was just a case of two actors trying to figure out their roles and just doing the best they can do them. I'm sorry to give a generic answer like that.
You didn't think he was getting larger than life as the movie?
No, because when you read the script, that's a given. You look at the character of the Joker, and I will admit, I looked at it and I thought, boy, had I not just done Beetlejuice, this would be very appealing to me, because there's a lot of fun in that character. And then when I found out it was going to be Jack, I thought there couldn't be a better choice than Jack. I don't believe. So the pitfall would have been to rationalize my role into something that it wasn't, just to make him more outrageous or try to compete with Jack, which is probably an impossible task anyway. So I just stuck to what I thought was right for the character and trusted it'd stand on its own.
What's your favorite Bat toy?
I don't have one right now.
And nothing that you'd like to take home with you?
The Batmobile is pretty fun. I think I only drove it once, didn't I?
But Mr. Burton, Mr. Peters said that Nicholson was originally booked for 3 weeks, and he ended up spending 140 days there.
I'm just very slow.
Was that because you were slower, or did you add him into more scenes?
No, he wasn't added into any more scenes. It was, I mean, I don't know what the deal was, so I can't comment on that specifically, but it wasn't. We didn't add him into any more scenes, and I was a little slow. Not that slow. I don't think I went.
Michael, individually, did you respond to anyone who would be? You played your part with such restraint. Individually, could you both respond to if people were coming to this, the people who would be coming to this movie to see a comedy?
What about it?
What
am I
would you
supposed to do?
say? What would you say? I mean, I think people, the whole
Go
an entire
away. Go away. No,
an entire generation that was raised on the TV series that might be going to see this film to see kapow, gee whiz, golly. Well, how
Oh,
do
there are
you-
laughs in it, but not laughs in that neighborhood.
Also, I think there's been enough pre-publicity that most people don't know that it's not that. I mean, I've certainly said it to enough people, and I think that they have had a certain amount of pre-publicity to hopefully take care of that problem.
Can I say something?
So we really have
It's actually a lot like the TV series.
The costume notwithstanding, did you ever want to have muscles like that?
I don't know. I haven't thought about it. Yeah, maybe muscles like that would be kind of cool. Let me take a look at mine.
Let's all take a look at that.
Sure.
I'm Melinda, by the way.
Okay, we are back. I really enjoyed that interview, Matt. One of the things was Michael Keaton remaining unflustered regarding the questions about his viability as Bruce Wayne. I thought that was really, really cool.
Well, comic book fans, like we said, they hated that he was cast as the Caped Crusader, and they were really obnoxious about it. When the movie came out, of course, they loved him. And the good news is they all apologized, they learned their lesson, and they have never complained about new actors playing Batman ever again.
Speaking of new actors, though, in 20 years, as time goes by, I think a lot of people have gotten on the Michael Keaton page as far as his performance as Batman.
Yeah, I think he's sort of the one that everyone compares all the new Batmans to.
Yeah.
Is he as good as Michael Keaton?
Yeah.
And Birdman is all about that.
Birdman is all about that. It really reframes that whole his work in Batman and Batman Returns.
So we actually could have ended the show right here, but what is a Batman episode without Jack Nicholson? We have to have the Joker in there, right?
Right.
So unfortunately, Jack Nicholson doesn't do a lot of junkets, which is something that he's actually going to talk about here. So he did not attend the press day for Batman. We didn't get him. But we do have him from other junkets. So we decided to throw him in. We're going to jump ahead 5 years to June 5th, 1994, when Jack Nicholson did show up at the press junket for the werewolf movie Wolf, which he co-starred with Michelle Pfeiffer.
And it makes sense that out of all the press junkets, he would come in for this one because Mike Nichols is an old collaborator and friend.
Right.
They worked together on the film Carnal Knowledge. Yeah, that's good. So I mean, it makes a lot of sense then.
I kind of think that this interview pairs well with Batman because it's another genre film. So, he talks about things like monsters and being afraid of the dark, and it makes it a better interview to listen to right after Tim Burton and Michael Keaton, as opposed to, pulling some Nicholson interview from one of his dramas where he talks about serious things.
Yeah.
So, do we need to go over his credits? I mean, he's iconic.
He's
Jack
iconic.
Nicholson.
But regarding, going back to Mike Nichols, working with Mike Nichols, I see a couple more than Carnal Knowledge. He worked with him on The Fortune in 1975, Heartburn. So there's a slew of films, several films that he worked with Mike Nichols. They do have that long relationship together.
Yeah.
So
Mike Nichols, a legendary director. He made Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, The Graduate, Silkwood, Working Girl, and he died in 2014.
And Wolf, as Nicholson will allude to, is a different change of pace for Mike Nichols. So that was interesting to give him a little bit of respect, Mike Nichols. Also, what you're going to hear too is Nicholson's take on his own feature, his directing feature, which was the sequel to Chinatown, The Two Jakes. So you're going to get a little bit of insight on The Two Jakes from Nicholson, which I'm sure you're going to address in the postscript as well.
Well, maybe not.
Maybe not.
He does talk about an incident that was dominating the news at the time, but I think it's been kind of forgotten in the years since. So just in case you guys aren't aware, this actually happened on February 8th, 1994, which is only 2 months before this interview. A guy named Robert Blank was stopped at an intersection in North Hollywood when Nicholson pulled up behind him, got out of his car, started shouting about how Blank had just cut him off, and then Nicholson pulled some golf clubs out of his car and he bashed in the roof and the windshield of Blank's Mercedes-Benz, all while Beyonce's Lemonade blared from his car stereo.
I don't know about that last part, though. Lemonade.
I may have embellished a little bit on that last part. Blank filed a criminal lawsuit, but later dropped the charges after the two reached an undisclosed settlement, which reportedly included a check for $500,000. It's probably the most famous case of road rage in Hollywood history, and in a few minutes you're going to hear Jack's take on it, or at least to the legal extent that he was allowed to talk about it.
Credit the journalist to actually make a crack about that during the interview to get to that actual comment. So credit to whoever that journalist was. I don't know who it was. I was trying to discern from the voice.
Don't remember.
But props to that. Anyways, with all that in mind, here is Jack Nicholson.
Be a little warm because they can't have your picture. Hi.
Afternoon, I guess. Or morning.
Please. Still morning.
Thank you. Still morning.
Attach your microphone to your...
No, fine. After all, that's what we're here for.
Now, see, Monica didn't ask.
Well,
He asked for us.
Thank you. Perfect.
Thank you very much.
How's everything going? All right.
Very well. Very well.
Here's an ashtray.
Thank you.
How'd you work out the balance of the ambivalence? You know, what part good, what part bad about Bill turning into a wolf?
Well, this movie, since there's not a lot of other than the classical reference points for it, is shot out of continuity, so it kind of enhances what I like that's best about movie acting, in the sense you build it up. By that, you will have shot what happened on Thursday before you've shot what happened on Tuesday. And if you already know what happened on Thursday, it sort of dictates what happened on Tuesday. In other words, it works both ways, and since it's indigenous to film acting, I like that quality. In fact, you have to build these decisions up. You may go in and have thought you were going to play a scene with someone where you're this. What you asked about was the ambivalence. You're ambivalent in this direction. Film says something else when you look at it. No longer a theoretical character discussion. That is the reality. That's the main thing. In other words, I use that to vitalize what I do and make it more unpredictable. I'll have a general graph to begin with, but I don't demand that it falls into that slot that I started off with of myself.
You've worked repeatedly with Mike Nichols. What is it about him that distinguishes itself from working with other directors?
Well, I think it's the thing is why I hope that I collaborate with anybody is true of Jim. It's true of Michelle. I hadn't worked with James. It's also will prove to be true of him. But it's a mutually shared concern. You know, it can almost be embarrassing to talk about anything but the commercial element of a film in the professional world today. I mean, certainly it's changed since I used to go out and push movies a lot. But nonetheless, people like Mike and Jim, I mean, we prefer not to have to do it in public, but we're serious about what we do. This is, after all, a difficult task to set yourself to make a serious movie with some dignity and resonance that the public is going to look at as, where's the new werewolf movie coming out? But nonetheless, if someone like Mike and Jim decide to approach this literary problem, it's, you know, success is not guaranteed. Success is it's by dangerous, not bomb dangerous, but just creatively there's risks involved, because you don't know if you're going to be able to find that certain note. You know, to make a movie that kind of has Mike's style. This is a big departure for Mike, this movie. It's what I admire most about what he did on this movie. It's his style, closely observed behavior. You know, it creates its own reality, you know, that tenet of the theater, you know, the suspended belief. You know, you hope that, you know, by the time Wolf gets rolling, this story will seem very feasible to everyone. And that's really I don't want to use the word trick, but a facet of making a successful theatrical experience is the suspension of belief. And to do it without rattling, or the thing starts off with everybody's blown up or eaten alive, or whatever the thing, the shock value that's why you know, Mike's particular sensibility is why I always like working with him. It's always a very interesting singular approach to the work, and he has that kind of old master feeling that then the work's not meant to show.
You know,
is it the accretion of detail then that he does?
Definitely.
Is what you find appealing in his?
Definitely. I mean, it's tough work always, but it is what appeals to me.
Why this story? Obviously, you have a lot of scripts to choose from.
Well, Harrison is a very old, dear friend of mine. I've always been interested in his work. I've been involved in his work in a lot of ways in the past already. And he brought the story. And it's like any other project. Once you read the story, the fact that we're old friends wouldn't mean I was going to do his film. But the fact that it was some of the things I've said before, a very challenging idea. I look at this area of acting as the classical acting for American actors. You know, when I do The Devil or The Joker or anything where it's bigger than life, you know, we'll always have a problem finding the fashion that would make, you know, Ibsen or Shaw or anybody like that immediately germane in Shakespeare in a classical sense. These are really the classical parts for American actors. So I've thought about playing all of them on and off. I always thought I would like to do all these parts eventually.
Are you at a stage in your career where you feel like you want to work as much as possible now? That maybe is there some sense of time, right? You know, you're not able to do it forever.
No. Nobody's going to be able to do it forever. But the things that I used to weigh more heavily, you know, the idea of what is a career, a body of work, and longevity for an artist, I feel a little bit past that. I'm suspicious of myself whenever I feel like I've gotten to, because plateaus and things taken for granted are the real craft enemy of the actor. You got to approach everything at A. It's a demand of the job to do it well. You don't get credit. You know, you can't say, well, I did this picture, so this is going to be that much easier. It doesn't work that way. You're going to have to learn how to say, hello, Mrs. Jones. How are you today? Every time it's your job to say it.
with that in mind, my first recollection of you was in Little Shop of Horrors.
Mm-hmm.
And you got your teeth pulled out.
Yeah.
What was your life like then as a struggling actor, and how do you think the business has changed? And when you look back on those works of yours?
Well, I mean, as any struggling actor, you know, on the sense I think you're asking, you're in a certain kind of desperation. I mean, you know, that's the real danger period for an actor, is when you have to choose, well, there are many other ways I could make my way in life. I'm smart, I'm this, I'm that, I'm the other thing. I'm nonetheless going to risk my 20s on the fact that I'm going to be able to do this, which when you're not in the position where it's just going for you well, is a big risk. It's your life. So I was at that point of a Little Shop of Horrors. I mean, I've told a story about that. Roger did not want me. One of the things that's interesting, I saw that film at the AFI, is it was one of the first parodies. You know, everything that we did looks like parody when you view it in retrospect. But that particular movie, we were at least intentionally trying to be funny in it. So I remember it as that. It was really the first time I hadn't done that many movies where I went to a movie I was in and the audience was laughing and I was glad. You know, that's one big difference. And the way it's changed is that movie was made, I would say the main creative impulse behind it was they made a half-hour television shows in 3 days in those days. And Roger wanted to prove that he could shoot a full-length feature in 2. So he shot most of Little Shop of Horrors in 2 days.
What kind of monsters were you afraid of as a child?
Lights Out, the radio show, sort of, if I was to try and reach back and inform what's really scared me at that stage, you know, that radio show was really the strongest piece of work for the general audience of the bizarre and the frightening, you know. So it was like the rats getting off the banana boat, or a woman threw some chicken heart out the back window and suddenly the ground started thumping. You know, I guess they were, unbeknownst to me, they're things they're robbing from Edgar Allan Poe, who created the genre. And it becomes plagiarized, but successful for the mass audience, in this case, Lights Out. But I have an abiding fear of the dark that comes up intermittently, which they think is strange because that's meant to be fear of your own subconscious, something that I try to constantly rupture the membrane of to get it working into my own job. But, you know, I live alone, and you know, sometimes I get scared at night just in general, see things in the shadows. But I mean, I'm not very metaphysically inclined, so it is mainly back then. It's a good question, sense of what monsters frightened me then.
You know,
Jaws frightened me. That's not a monster. That's a monster.
So here's the scenario.
Yeah.
Guy cuts you off at coming into an intersection to make yellow light. You don't make the red light. You catch him at the next light. What club do you use?
What club would I use now? I would never leave the car. I would go play golf, what I was supposed to do. In that case, I happen to remember, I almost brought it down here with me because I know people, it's a shameful incident on my behalf. I have to agree with the court on this, in the sense that I'm unallowed by legal restrictions to talk about the actuality of it. The court's decision is based on however I was motivated. You know, you shouldn't be threatening people. I mean, I'm one of the people who's most vociferously against violence. I used to be a tough guy, too, when I was a kid. But, you know, we got to back off of it, and you got to start with yourself. So that's a shameful thing to me.
But if this...
But I don't think people should be cutting people off. Here, how about this? Why don't everybody drive better? You know what I mean? Everybody would suddenly drive better. I'd be more than happy to do the time on their behalf.
You know,
I'd make it up just on the trips around the city.
We've often wanted to talk to you, and in the past we haven't really been able to. And I'm wondering why now, for this film in particular, you chose to do press, because it's something that obviously we've heard time and again, you're not fond of doing this.
Well, it's not just me, as you know. I mean, after all, it's a job. Nobody's always fond of their job. And this has become a minefield for people, you know. I mean, no comment doesn't save you from disgrace in American public life anymore. It just doesn't. So I've always specifically negotiated, because most of the time I'm working, I don't have a large group of them. They are the Philistines in my work. I don't see it that way. You know, I like the collaborative quality of movie making. I mean, otherwise I wouldn't have, you know, look at Michelle, all these wonderful people just on this project. If you're just doing it as a singular unit, you won't get the best out of the other elements of your job. You know, it's not all about product. I mean, you got to be disciplined. In the case of talking to the press, you know, I mean, I specifically, because I don't want one friend to say, well, you did interviews for Wolf, why aren't you doing them? I specifically negotiate that I don't have to do any of them, because I might not want to. You know, I might not want to, and if I don't want to, there's other ways of fulfilling this particular requirement of our jobs than me coming down and junketing it up with y'all and everything. But sometimes you want to do it. You know, because this movie is what I said earlier, because it's a difficult, the work shouldn't show in the end. People shouldn't say, whew, how difficult it was. It should be what Mike does. It looks kind of flowing and effortless. But I felt it might need not support necessarily, but maybe a couple of things that could key up how the movie might be looked at to put it in its best light. And I only do it when I think it's going to make me extra money.
I admire your work so much. I can't imagine what it must be like for you that anywhere you go on this planet, people recognize you and know you?
If they see you, yeah.
What is that like? And is that cool, or is that like not cool?
Well, you know, it's one of those things. I'm not sure I can answer your questions. I'm very pragmatic. It doesn't matter whether it's something. It's QED. That's what it is. You know, you're gonna. You know, you made yourself a public person. You're gonna recognize you everywhere you go. Would anyone choose it? No. Anonymity is if you're cool within your own ego and sense of self-worth and don't need constant recognition. Anonymity is a tremendous asset for living a life. I mean, my life is truncated. I mean, I can't do everything exactly the way I would do it, which is my nature because of it. I can't sign the first 3-year-old girl that asks me for an autograph at a baseball game. I can't sign that first autograph because then everybody else in that row is not going to see that baseball game. It's a tough moment for any human being. You know, there's nobody, me included, who says, well, I just have to reject a 3-year-old girl and that's that. You know, you feel it.
But
it's no fun, but you got to do it.
But how does it feel
have to do it.
to have that many people doing impressions of you, too? Because there isn't a person that we haven't interviewed over the years that's worked with you that doesn't do an impression of you.
Certainly Kevin Pollak.
Everybody. It's mind-boggling.
Well, Aladdin, you know, Robin has always been so wonderful to me. I mean, you know, I'm really very grateful for his, you know, parodying and his jocular approach to what I'm all about. I mean, I'd have to say thank you very much. So that's all fine. You know, you're right. I mean, there's certain situations where someone else, or even me, might sue Disney for it. I think there's a guy doing voiceover on television now who, you know, they did lookalikes and did those suits. I think there's a guy doing narrative because I don't do a tremendous amount of money, as you know, seeing who's doing them in narrating commercials. I think there's a guy doing my voice and my approach to these things right now. You know, I mean, I've often thought when I hear him working, I thought, I wonder if this is an interesting kind of lawsuit here. Yeah, on looking alike, right?
No, on sounding.
On sounding alike too.
Yeah,
okay, so, yeah. Well, I think there's a guy because I've heard him now on more than one night. I mean, it's not a good, it's not a, you know, it's not a synonymous imitation, and he may just talk that way, but I think it's interesting.
I'm compiling a movie encyclopedia, and I'd be so grateful if I could just throw out a couple of titles, and if you could just do 1 or 2 sentences on, well, you know, when I say Chinatown, what do you think?
You know, Chinatown.
It's considered, you know, one of the best modern films. Do you think it's one of your best works?
I tend not to, all comparisons are odious, but I mean, I think Roman, it's a world-class director. You know, I think you make any list, he's in the top echelon of that list. So, and it is one of his best jobs.
How about Two Jakes? How do you feel about the finished product?
Excellent. Very disappointed in the way in which it was received. I'm not in a sense, I'm sanguine about it. You know, I'm not mad at the public because I know, you know, I mean, this is one of the things I have to watch when I'm doing that job is, I mean, I like the elliptical and the obscure, and, you know, a director's job sometimes is to clarify. I mean, you know, it's a difficult house of cards. You said Chinatown, Two Jakes. Roman loves Two Jakes. Why? Because what I felt is it should fit with the other picture. The audience possibly doesn't respond to it. But the audience, there's always a sophistry when you start talking about audiences. Greatest picture of all time, Chinatown. They didn't understand Chinatown any more than they did Two Jakes when they saw it. They couldn't tell you the story. You're writing the encyclopedia. You could barely tell me the story of Chinatown. You see what I mean? So there's always a little bit of pre-digested response there. And I do feel that, you know, very few movies that I've ever done, this just has nothing to do with me or anything, but phenomenologically, they've all opened. The only ones that don't is when a studio is in the newspapers for months and years in advance knocking the picture.
Well, some of them open better than others, Batman.
But they all open. They all open. Almost every movie I've ever done has opened. As I say, it does not have that much to do with me or whatever, but...
has a great deal to do with it.
Yeah, it has something to do, you know, it doesn't keep it from opening, you know, that I'm involved. But
what about directing again? Are you eager to? Do you plan to?
I'm not working right now, you know, I mean, I'm trying, you know, I mean, I've worked pretty much every day for 9 years or so, and I needed the time off. But my fantasy about work, which I'm trying to suppress them a little so that I'm not thinking about work when I'm not working, would be to direct something, you know, again. I mean, I don't think I have the right to it as much as I did before, like Two Jakes. I've made, after all, 3 movies that I think were pretty good anyway, for one reason or another. None of them have really gotten that commercial excitement that it's only fair for a producing company to hope for when you make a movie for them. So in the fairness sense, I feel like I'm gonna have to generate. So I have offers to direct movies right now. I mean, I do have them, but that's not the way I do it. I want to know what I want to do before I just go ahead and do it. I mean, the Two Jakes I basically directed almost by default. You know, it was a movie that had to get made because of all the other things surrounding it, and there was really no other way, no better way to make it than for me to direct it.
Was there ever a time when you thought of just like giving it up? Because you've been doing this for such a long time.
Giving up?
Giving up this business.
Yeah, I mean, I've always thought about, well, you know, when's da-da-da-da-da. I think about it, of course. I guess in terms of the way I am, I would never make that specific a pronouncement. I mean, I may have given it up already sitting here and don't know it.
How do you keep it?
Because after all, I'm lucky enough that's sort of been up to me for quite a while.
Last question. This summer is the 25th anniversary of the Woodstock Festival, the summer of 1969. You were in one of the biggest movies of the summer, and it really changed everything around for you. Do you think having another festival is stupid? What is your hit on?
Another what?
Another Woodstock Festival that they're going to have this summer. Is it stupid? What are your musical tastes? Would you go to it?
Well, it's interesting because I'm probably the only 60s person. I went to Woodstock the day after the festival, scouting Hobart University for Drive, he said. I mean, I did Live Aid because it's formally, and Billy Graham is a good friend of mine, and the way I was asked and so forth, and that's the only thing of that kind. I didn't go even to the Monterey Festival. I laid my head down on Sunset Boulevard and looked like this one way and the other way. There was nobody here because all my friends went to the Monterey. That was the first one, of course. Everybody I knew went to this thing. I'd been to the first Love-In as well, and I just didn't feel like it.
Before they whisk you away, real quickly, can you address just the sequel in terms of endearment before you leave? Because we've heard that there's going to be a sequel.
Well, I've heard some kind of stuff like that. I don't know anything about it.
Would you be involved with it?
I'm not doing it. I'm not reading anything now. I'm not considering work now. It's an impossible question to answer, honestly.
Okay, go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Shirley says you are. I'll understand if you say no.
What's that?
Could you sign this for me?
Sure.
Oh, thanks. Oh, that's great. Thank you so much.
This is what I do. You talk about getting along with the public. When someone asks me to do this with that particular rejoinder, I say, yeah, I'll sign it if you sign all the rest of them.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Mr. Nicholson. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
I'm a big fan of yours.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jack. Good work.
Okay, so we're back with Jack Nicholson. You know, Jack Nicholson to me is one of the great storytellers during several times we did get him in press junket history. Yeah. I do remember a lot of things he said during another movie called The Pledge about being famous. But the bottom line is it's sad that we didn't get more of Jack Nicholson and his telling stories to us. So
sure. Now, I know that I talked about this earlier in the show with Tom Wilson, but it bears repeating. I wasn't at this junket, but this is another one where I feel a little frustrated when I listen to it, because I know that if I had been sitting at that table, I would have fought the room to ask certain follow-up questions. The one that bothered me here was when Jack talked about why he didn't do most junkets, but he said he wanted to do this one because there were certain things about the film that he wanted to make sure that audiences understood. But then he didn't say what those things were, and nobody asked him. They changed the subject and moved on, and I wouldn't have let that slide. I would have made sure he finished that thought. Oh well, too late now.
I wasn't at that junket, so it's good. I don't know. I would have probably been one of the junketeers who probably wouldn't have followed up. Like you said, I'm in a fetal position all the time.
Now, to give a little context to one of the moments that you just heard, when he was talking about how so many people do impressions of him, he said something about Robin doing it, but then he didn't say any more. He didn't give any explanation. As an animation fan, I know exactly what he meant. He was talking about Robin Williams in the Disney film Aladdin, because there's a moment where he does a Nicholson impression as the genie. And the character even changes his face to look like Jack Nicholson when he says the line. Aladdin came out in 1992, just a year and a half before this interview. So at the time, he could get away with that shorthand and everyone would just know what he meant. Nowadays, not so much. He also said that he had offers to direct again, but that nothing had really grabbed him. And to date, it still hasn't. 1990's The Two Jakes is still the last film that Jack Nicholson has directed. There was some talk in the interview about maybe they were going to make a sequel to Terms of Endearment and whether or not he was going to be in it. They did make that movie. It was called The Evening Star. It came out in 1996, and yes, Nicholson was in it, and probably the less said about it, the better.
Wow. I haven't seen either movie, unfortunately.
You also haven't seen Back to the Future 2. What is wrong with you?
I'm glad it's not featured in any of our episodes. Just kidding. So, Jack Nicholson, I think he's retired now. You think?
I think that's true. I think, wasn't The Departed the last one we saw him in?
So, no, there were a couple more after that. There was The Bucket List. I'm Still Here. He played himself in Jack Nicholson. That was a documentary with on Joaquin Phoenix, that faux documentary.
Oh,
and
yeah.
He ended on 2010's How Do You Know, which was directed and written by James L. Brooks. Now, he did not announce on 2010 that he was retiring. He announced several years later that he was like, no, don't expect any more films from him down the pike. So I think he has closed that chapter on his career, but he's had obviously a great run. We salute you, Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, great actor. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, classic.
Yeah, and one of my all-time favorite actors is Marlon Brando. He's in this movie called The Missouri Breaks, really cool Western. He's just been in so many movies, so he's had a great career. Love Jack Nicholson. I will eventually, Matt, go see Back to the Future, but do you have anything else to say before we leave?
I really don't. I think we can plug our next episode. I think it's going to be a pretty Titanic one.
It's going to be there's going to be a couple of icebergs up ahead. That was a horrible joke, and it's going to be icy. There's going to be a lot of good things. Obviously, the episode is Titanic. We are revisiting, in a weird way, James Cameron once again. Big Cameron.
True. Yeah. A little while ago we did Terminator 2, and now we're doing Titanic. But both of them are huge movies with totally different actors. So it's a different experience, different time of his life, and some really good interviews.
So until then, we will see you for Titanic. But before we leave, we have to do a little sign off. Remember to follow us, to like us on Facebook, facebook.com/Matt and Greg.
Right. Also our webpage, which is mattandgregpodcast.com.
Follow us on our YouTube channel. Subscribe to us on any of the podcatchers, including iTunes and Google Play. We're all over the place.
Yeah. Spread the word. Tell your friends. Tell your family. Make play cards and walk around town with them.
Like as Matt said, we're still finding our footing. We're only, how many episodes in are we right now? 21?
This was 21.
Yeah, we're 21 episodes in, folks. But these are 21 big movies. Actually, 20 big movies, including Waterworld. Just kidding, Waterworld, we love you. But so we're 21 episodes in. We want to hear some more comments and hopefully support from you, fellow movie buffs. What do you want to listen to? What do you want to hear in the future? Matt, do you have anything to say before we're off?
I don't, but we look forward to joining you again in a couple of weeks with Titanic.
Titanic. Okay, take care.
We now return you to your regularly scheduled lives.